Now go into public session. The purpose of the meeting today is to consider that the extreme delays recently experienced by passengers at Dublin Airport and the DA's detailed plans and solutions to address this. I am pleased to welcome from the DA today Mr. Dalton Philips, CEO of the Dublin Airport Authority, who is accompanied by Mr. Gary McLean, Deputy Managing Director, Dublin Airport, Ms. Catherine Gubbins, Group Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Vincent Harrison, Managing Director, Dublin Airport, Mr. Maurice Hennessy, Chief Information and Security Operations Officer, Ms. Louise Bannon, Head of Marketing, Mr. Brendan O'Hanlon, Head of ER/IR, and Mr. Kevin Cullinan, Group Head of Communications. I'd like to thank Mr. Phillips for agreeing to meet the committee on this important matter at such short notice. So you're welcome, Mr. Phillips, and obviously we await with great interest on the outline of your plans. We as a committee, obviously the Transport Committee, falling under our remit, and this is really about the public today. This has been screened live on RTE News Now, and I think what the public want at this stage is reassurance that if they turn up at Dublin Airport over the June bank holiday weekend, that they'll be able to get their flight, they won't miss their flight, and they won't be there for an inordinate length of time, and then future plans of how you'll deal with it as well. So, note on privilege. Witnesses are reminded of the long-standing parliamentary practice that you should not criticise or make charges against any person or entity by name or in such a way as to make him, her or it identifiable, or otherwise engage in speech that might be regarded as damage to the good name of the person or entity. Therefore, if your statements are potentially defamatory in relation to an identified person or entity, you will be directed to discontinue remarks. It is imperative that you comply with any such direction. Members are reminded of the long-standing parliamentary practice to the effect that they should not comment on, criticise or make charges against a person outside the Houses or an official either by name in such a way as to make him or her identifiable. I would like to remind members of the constitutional requirement that members must be physically present within the confines of the Leinster House complex in order to partake in public meetings. I will not permit a member to participate where they are not adhering to this constitutional requirement. Therefore, any member who attempts to participate from outside the precincts will be reluctantly asked to leave the meeting. In this regard, I would ask any member partaking via MS Teams that prior to making their contribution to the meeting that you confirm you're on the grounds of the Leinster House campus. If attending in the committee room, you are asked to exercise personal responsibility to protect yourself and others from the risk of contacting COVID-19. I now invite Mr. Phillips of the DA to make his opening statement. Mr. Phillips.
Rahula. Members of the committee, good afternoon, and thank you for inviting DAA and members of my team to address the committee this afternoon. To begin with, I would like to take the opportunity to address our passengers directly and to apologise unreservedly to everyone who's been impacted by the challenges at Dublin Airport last weekend. That experience jars with our tradition of providing a positive passenger experience for our passengers. While the past number of weeks have been challenging, I fully appreciate that what our passengers experienced at the airport last weekend fell extremely short of our desired standards. I appreciate the anger, frustration, and upset that this has caused. Put simply, we failed in our duty to our passengers, and I want to offer my deep apologies to everyone impacted and indeed to the members of the Oireachtas here, as I also recognise the reputational damage to our country for which connectivity and ease of access is our lifeblood. I also want to assure passengers that if you were affected by last weekend's queues, you will be not left out of pocket. These challenges were not our passengers making in any way, and we'll work closely with everyone impacted to make sure that they are not impacted financially. If passengers were affected by last weekend's events, I would ask them to complete the online form on our website at dublinairport.com or email customerexperience@dublinairport.com, and we will ensure speedily recompense. I also want to take a moment at the outset of today's meetings to acknowledge the incredible efforts of all of DAA's employees during what has been a hugely challenging time. Our people, and I know many of the members here today know this, they're fiercely proud of our organisation, and their commitment and their efforts have been outstanding, particularly over recent weeks and months. However, I appreciate that apologies are not what the people are most interested in today. The committee and the public will be very keen to understand, and I know the chairman asked me about this, number one, exactly how these challenges have arisen. Number two, the immediate steps that we are taking as a business to address them and to ensure that last Sunday's events will not be repeated. There are three factors which have led us to the current situation, which I've outlined in detail in my statement. For the record, though, let me briefly say the following. The unexpectedly rapid rise in passenger numbers affecting the global aviation industry. The significant challenges in recruitment, particularly in security screening as a result of the new European Union's enhanced background checks. And number three, the absence due to COVID at the start of the year. The combination of these three factors had a significant impact on the business and created very significant queues for our passengers on March the 27th, following which we've implemented a significant work programme to address these challenges. Firstly, since recruitment began in 2021, we have now recruited over 300 new airport search unit officers, with 150 officers recruited since the end of April 2022 alone. We'll bring another 70 officers on board over the coming weeks, and DAA has set no upward limit on recruitment numbers. However, given the absolute criticality of security training, the process of onboarding these new staff cannot be rushed. And while we're making significant progress, it will take us another month before we get the full complement of additional trained security officers deployed on the floor of the airport. We've deployed a company-wide task force of officer-based staff and senior management. This includes more than 400 people who have now worked over 2,000 shifts and over 8,500 hours in support of our frontline team. And all of my team here have done multiple 3 a.m. starts in the airport over the previous months. We've also introduced overtime and incentives for our security staff, secured additional external queue management resources, and introduced a wide range of process improvements, passenger experiences, and communication initiatives. In fact, Chairman, you'll remember I wrote to you as recently as last Friday on the positive progress that we've been achieving across a whole range of key initiatives, which have led to an improved service level. And up until last weekend, Chairman, 94%, so 94% of all departing passengers travelling through the airport had cleared security in 45 minutes or less during May, while almost 80% had cleared security in 30 minutes or less. However, the fact remains that we have been and are still managing a resource gap as we pivot from losses of nearly €1 million a day and 1,000 redundancies during the COVID pandemic to a dramatic recovery of air travel, which has been faster and earlier than anybody could have predicted. In parallel with our substantial recruitment and resourcing up process, set to deliver a further increase in processing capacity this month and next month, we've been operating to a plan, albeit one that is predicated on very fine margins and the Herculean efforts of our staff. So reflecting on last weekend, Friday saw a similar number of passengers pass through Dublin Airport as Sunday, and travel on the Friday was without incident and without undue delay. On Sunday, that plan failed. Let me explain why, and also why I have confidence in our updated plan. On Sunday last, we had rostered and resourced staff to meet the demands of serving 50,000 departing passengers across both Terminals 1 and 2, with 200 security officers and a further 24 team supervisors and coordinators on duty. This would have allowed us to open sufficient security lanes and X-ray machines to cater for the first wave of departing passengers. However, on that day, we were 37 officers down, 37. So 17 of these officers were new recruits which were on our rostering system, and the rostering system had anticipated that they would have completed training which would allow them to work last Sunday, but in fact they had not yet been certified. So this anomaly has since been resolved in our processes. So 17 weren't there that should have been there, and that was a process issue, and we've since fixed that. We also incurred a loss of 20 officers that were absent from work on that day. Many of the 37 staff have particular clearances and certifications required to open and operate a lane, and so they can't be readily substituted by other DAA staff. Without this capacity, we were unable to bring in substitute staff at short notice in the early hours of Sunday morning. This compounded the queuing problem throughout much of Sunday. And the impact of this reduction in our anticipated human resources meant, or anticipated team, should I say, meant that we were unable to open 6 security lanes, 3 in each terminal, which was a loss of 30% capacity in the first wave. Each lane ordinarily screens about 200 passengers per hour, and being down 6 lanes, we had a processing deficit of 1,200 passengers per hour. So we were unable to achieve our anticipated productivity, and this quickly led to queues forming in security. As more and more passengers joined the growing queues for the available security lanes, the situation became compounded, leading to a decision at 10:30 a.m. to advise those passengers queuing outside the terminal with flights departing before noon that they would not make their flights. This leads me to what will be a very different bank holiday weekend and into the extremely busy summer months of June, July and August ahead. So if you're okay, Chairman, I'll just give you our plans. Okay. We're focusing on passenger experience improvements across 3 core areas, while also introducing new escalation and triage mechanisms in the event of any unanticipated issues arising. We have submitted a detailed plan to the committee that is focused on a better passenger experience. And there are a number of key areas as follows. So maximising, number 1, the availability of staff resources, increasing the number of security lanes open at peak times, and improving queue management. And there's a detailed plan which hopefully at a later stage in this session, Chairman, I'll be able to take the committee through.
You might just give a very quick outline to the public
okay.
now.
Okay. So there are 4, well, I'll go to our passenger advice because I think passengers are very, very keen to understand that. Our passenger advice to passengers due to fly out of Dublin Airport over the coming period is to arrive at the airport at least 2.5 hours before the departure of a short-haul flight to Europe and the UK, and at least 3.5 hours for long-haul flights. At times when the terminal gets particularly busy, be it this weekend or into the future, we will be triaging access to the terminals and only allowing departing passengers into the departure level that have flights departing with 2.5 hours to short-haul destinations and 3.5 hours to long-haul destinations, as I said. So passengers that arrive too early for their flights, if we need to invoke the triage, will be asked to wait in a dedicated passenger holding area outside of the terminal, with special consideration being given to those passengers who require special assistance and those important flyers travelling obviously with things like autism. So for departing passengers, access to the appropriate terminals will be controlled and will require the presentation of documentation indicating the time of flight, such as a booking confirmation or a boarding card. DAA will put in bad weather cover, seating and toilets in the holding area as quickly as possible in the coming days following trialling of the system over the June bank holiday weekend. We don't anticipate we'll need it this weekend, but this is what we will be building for the summer, Chairman, and we can go into more details. So what I would say, Chairman, is following these incremental measures, we're confident. We have a robust plan, and we do not envisage a repeat of what happened last Sunday. We don't envisage that.
You might give a summary of your plan there in terms of extra staff, so public will know what you're putting in place.
Okay. But though challenges remain, the measures we have taken will very substantially mitigate the risk of this weekend and beyond. And should unanticipated issues arise, we will have appropriate escalation and triage mechanism focused on ensuring no passengers miss their flights. So I hope, Chairman, and I'll cover this now, and obviously members of the committee, that the specific initiatives and actions that DAA has been taking in recent weeks and months, we have made a lot of progress. We had a very difficult Sunday. We let a lot of our passengers down, but we have a plan around our staffing plan. So for this weekend, we will have 40 additional security officers working over the weekend. We will increase our staffing by 10% versus last weekend, okay? So 10% increase. And there's a number of details we could get into. We'll have a very detailed security plan which will increase our productivity by 10%. Now, last Friday, okay, and this coming Friday, for example, they're fairly similar numbers, okay? We'll have 10% more people in place. We will have 10% more productivity, and we will have a number of activities in place to ensure that people can have confidence that they will make their flights. We have an operations and safety plan in place, and clearly safety has to be the number one issue, getting people safely onto the flights. And we'll have a very strong communication plan around the 2.5 hours and the 3.5 hours. So challenges remain, but we continue to operate a very tight operation with finite margin for error. A very significant programme of work is ongoing by dedicated people to bring the operation back to the standards our customers should be able to expect. And we want all our passengers to have a very positive experience travelling into and out of Dublin Airport. And as the summer season ramps up, we'll continue to drive improvements in our overall service offering to this end. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, Mr. Dalton. And now go to members. Obviously, the public are looking in, so we want to get answers from the DEA as to how this happened and how you're going to ensure the details of the plan. So I'm going to ask members, I'll be giving 7 minutes. I'll give 6 minutes initially, and then they will have a further minute. I would ask members, in the interest of getting the maximum use of this particular session for the public who are looking in on RT Now News Channel, and we thank RT for covering it, that we can get the maximum extraction of information. So members of the public that are going to be flying from Dublin Airport this weekend will have absolute clarity and assurance that they will get their flight and that they will not be waiting an inordinate amount of time, and in terms of the safety and generally the facilities at Dublin Airport. So first up is Deputy James O'Connor. You have 6 minutes, and once the 6 minutes is concluded, I will allow further minutes. So I just want you to keep an eye on the clock.
Of course, Chairperson, and just first and foremost to welcome the representatives of the DEA before the committee today. What happened over the course of the weekend is profoundly regrettable and has done remarkable damage in your organisation and to the state. I think it's important that this committee would ask a number of key questions regarding the operational failures at Dublin Airport over the weekend. And the first one I want to ask is that in 2021, your organisation received, particularly in Dublin, about €97.2 million in direct exchequer support for the operational parts of the airport. And may I ask, in regards to that funding, was any of it used in terms of the retention of staff at the airport? Or why was it not used regarding the retention of security staff?
O'Connor, the 97 million was from the government explicitly to go to the airlines as an incentive scheme to incentivise airlines to operate schedules this summer. You'll remember that there was a very no commentator believed that traffic would come back to pre-COVID levels until 2024 or 2025. Out of concern for that and all that needed to be done to incentivise traffic in and out of the country, the government put 97 million in. We didn't receive a single penny of that. That went to the airlines in terms of reduced airport charges.
When it came to the retention of staff, Mr. Phillips, what supports were provided by government in order to keep your organisation going? You've outlined in your opening statement that you were losing approximately €1 million per each day. When it came to those types of financial supports, what were you in receipt of?
So, Deputy O'Connor, we are in receipt of the supports that any other business in the country would have received. We get no special supports whatsoever. We are a fully commercial organisation. We have to access the debt markets to raise capital, and we receive no extra support. So we did avail of the temporary wage subsidy scheme. There was some rate waivers that were in place, but they were the same for any company right across the country. We did not get any specific supports directly to the DAA because of our unique situation.
Okay, so obviously you were in receipt of EWAS, if that's particularly the case. And so why was EWAS not used to retain the security staff?
Well, so I suppose just to give you a little bit of context around our financial profile just before COVID, and indeed...
No, that's not the question I asked. I've really limited time, I'm so sorry. But in relation to the receipt of EWAS that you would have got, like so many other businesses, why was that not used to retain key critical staff, particularly the staff in question here, which do take a very significant amount of time to train into their particular positions?
Yeah, Connor, we were losing €1 million every single day. Our net debt doubled. We had to reduce costs. We did not know how long this pandemic was going to go on for. We certainly didn't think that it was going to recover in 2022 to the extent it has. As I said, it was 2024, 2025. So we reduced our overall staffing level by 25% with a voluntary severance scheme across the business. And that got us down to about 70% of what we needed. We felt, Deputy O'Connor, that going into 2022, with 70% of our staffing, we'd be okay.
And
we
Mr.
were wrong.
Phillips, did you communicate those points to the Minister for Transport and the Minister of State with responsibility for aviation? Did you tell them what potentially could happen? And my understanding was there was about approximately 50,000 travelled through the weekend, or through the airport on Sunday in particular. But we could be going up to as much as 100,000 in a number of weeks' time per day. So, you know, did you communicate the potential ramifications of these staff being let go to the Minister and to the Department?
Deputy O'Connor, we had to let people go. We thought we would not be at this level.
I asked you a very specific question, Mr. Phillips, and you appreciate with very limited time. Were those particular points communicated with the Department of Transport, with the Minister and the relevant officials in that department about what potentially could happen?
We would have explained that there was a risk when you downsize, but that was a risk that we took. It wasn't that...
I think it's important for everybody's professional reputation here that that particular point is expanded upon. I'm genuinely trying to give all of you the benefit of the doubt. I'm being fair here. But was that communicated? So I would take that as a yes.
Yes, I'm just trying to put some colour on it, Deputy O'Connor, which is when you're downsizing, we took all the industry analysts' data, and we worked through that to try and predict what the traffic levels would be for 2022, 23, 24. And we reduced our overall cost base to meet that. We were wildly wrong in terms of the recovery levels that happened once the travelling public, and I'm talking about from March onwards, Deputy O'Connor, started travelling. January and February, as you know, were very concerning months. We had Ukraine, we had Omicron. From March, it took off at a level we were not had not expected, and therefore we were behind where we needed to be in terms of our recruitment.
Let's talk about the projections for a second. That is interesting. We were told in this committee repeatedly that it would be approximately 2025 before we returned to 2019 levels. How quickly do you now, on today's figures, feel that you're going to get back to going north of 30 million passengers a year?
We will be annualising, we'll be north of 30 next year. And if you were to take a run rate from the middle of this summer and project it 12 months, Deputy O'Connor.
So you're going to arrive at that position 2 years early?
Correct.
Is the infrastructure in Terminal 1 in particular in Dublin Airport capable of handling those numbers again, or is it all down to staffing?
So the infrastructure is able to manage that level of throughput. We did it, we were actually 33 million passengers pre-pandemic, and we'll be 30 plus next year. So it is, but the limiting resource we have is security screeners at the moment. And you and I, Deputy O'Connor, cannot do that. It is, you need to be certified. It's a skilled role. And we need to dramatically increase the amount of screeners we have in our business. And at the moment, we do not have enough.
Mr. Phillips, my final question to you is my time is very, very limited, right? If you know what's coming down the tracks, we're going to be hitting a position in a few weeks' time which is going to be remarkably difficult for Dublin Airport to handle. Would you not look at the key regional airports in Cork Airport, which your organisation manage, and the likes of Shannon, for other routes to be located at those airports as a temporary measure to get over the situation we're in? Because 1,000 people missed their flight. If this gets any worse, it could be much more significant than that. So would you not look at that potential emergency action, working with the other airports to redirect some flights on a temporary basis to get you over the position that you now currently find yourself in?
To conclude, Mr. Phillips.
To conclude, Deputy O'Connor, the airlines make the choice about where they fly their aircraft. The airport doesn't. So we provide the infrastructure. So we don't direct where an airline flies to. That's what the airline does.
At this point in time, you cannot handle the traffic that's coming through the airports. That's hugely concerning. And I think that is food for thought, Chairman, that we need to try and come up with a plan there in that particular regard. Thank you.
Yeah, just our main focus today is about passengers, 100,000 per day coming to Dublin Airport, the worries they have. And I take the more under national aviation policy for another day, as important, but today's our key focus is for people looking in.
Chairman.
Deputy Duncan Smith, 6 minutes, and I'll give you an extra minute.
These holding areas that have been announced as part of your plan, where exactly will they be in relation to the terminal buildings?
So, Deputy Smith, we would be using some of the outside queuing areas that we've got now, which are in place, Deputy Smith, and we would also use some of our short-term car parks, both in Terminal 1 and Terminal 2, that are adjacent and that are covered and can provide a safe infrastructure in the event that we need to triage. We don't expect to have that in place this weekend, Deputy Smith, but as the numbers build over the summer, we want to have the contingency that should we be faced with a situation, it's much more orderly and better managed than last Sunday.
So this weekend, the advice is, with luggage, for short-haul flights, 3.5 hours, long-haul flights, 4.5 hours, if you have luggage. That's
if
the
you
advice.
have luggage.
So if you would arrive for a short-haul flight 3.5 hours in advance, are you envisaging that people will have to be outside for a period of time, or will they be able to go direct into the terminal building?
Our plan for this weekend, Deputy Smith, is that people will not have to be outside for any length of time. There could be, like we had some, this morning at 4 a.m, we had some people outside for about 10 minutes. We don't anticipate it, but we want to be prepared for it. What I would say, Deputy Smith, is that 94% of all people were getting in through security in under 45 minutes through May. Like, we had a... It's not where we should be.
Yeah, we didn't think we'd be here after your letter last week, but we're here after the weekend. And now we have a plan which is going to have gazebo terminal or gazebo holding areas now, or covered holding terminals for the summer. In the event, but they will be set up for the summer, but not for this weekend. In the event that we have these issues
as the traffic numbers
increases. Okay. Do you have a plan to ensure food and beverage concessions are open both landside and airside in every terminal and every gate to ensure that people are able to get refreshments and stuff that they need, because that's been a key problem. Is there a plan to ensure that the sanitary facilities in terms of toilets and that are clean as well? These are the key problems. These are other key problems that existed this weekend.
So, Deputy Smith, we've been working with our food and beverage partners. As you know, I think many pubs up and down the country are closed a couple of days a week because they can't staff, same for restaurants. And it's no different in the food and beverage sector within the airports. So we've been gradually bringing on as many food and beverage outlets as possible to ensure that we can give the customer service that our passengers want. But Deputy Smith, the reality is over the last months that we haven't been able to open them all. We don't actually operate.
No, I understand that.
We work with our partners.
Yeah.
So what we will do is we try and make sure that in all the key piers that there is something available, but there may not be the full variety that passengers would expect. Now, it gets better and better, but it's a very difficult recruitment market out there for all parts of the ecosystem.
It's part of the overall experience. If you're 4.5, 5 hours, however, waiting from when you get out of your car or bus or whatever to get to your gate, and you haven't had a cup of tea or you haven't been able to use a toilet facility, that's a huge problem. The government, we know, didn't provide any conditionality in terms of retaining employees. You were losing €1 million a day. Did the government ever say to you as part of the EWSS, because the DAA is a distinct case, it's not like other companies, right? This is a strategic state agency. But did they ever say, look, you're getting this support, we actually need you to cut costs? Did the government, either through ministers or senior officials in the Department of Transport, ever say, look, you're getting all this money from us, we actually need to see you cut costs?
So Deputy Smith, the money that you refer to, is that the incentive for the airline?
No, the TWSS.
We're like any other business.
No, but you're not really. I'm just.
How we run it is like any other business.
Okay, so that never came from government. There was never any because every decision that was made in relation to staff sizing, downsizing, right sizing, to use your language, was made by you guys in the management team.
We are on our own here, Deputy Smith.
Do you think you pulled the lever too early in terms of May 2020 for the packages being offered to reduce staff? In terms of into the pandemic crisis, May 2020.
Did we cut to...
Do you think you pulled the lever to cut as many staff as early as you did into the crisis?
Did I make it too early?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. We were losing €1 million. We lost €284 million in 2020.
Was it too deep on the security checkers?
Too deep, too quick. And did the point I'm getting at, was the pandemic the moment you were waiting for as a DA to make the cuts that you always wanted to make?
No, absolutely not. Okay. I mean, categorically not. We were growing as we were going into 2020.
There's always a tension in the airport that there's always been a desire for management to cut long-term employees across many areas who are on good pay and good terms and conditions. And the sense was, this is what I'm picking up, and I've had staff in more numbers contact me over the weekend, who are afraid to speak off the record. They're clarifying, this won't go anywhere, will it? Because who are still there. The culture is such that they have this fear. It's incredible. I felt like a Cold War spy master trying to talk to people.
Firmly refute that, Deputy Smith. And I think you have got a good understanding of our airport, and I think you know the people. I don't dispute that people may have said that to you, but our staff engagement, the work we're doing with our staff, the work that I personally as a CEO do in terms of being actively on the floor, all of these people that I'm with you with today, we all one day a month prior to the pandemic would have done a frontline shift, be it cleaning, be it customer service, be it security, whatever, to be upfront with our colleagues and listen and learn and develop. Do we have everything right? We absolutely don't, Deputy Smith.
Yeah. No, I'll just finish on this point. I thought I had a good understanding of the staff culture out there. This weekend has shifted it. I know it's a crisis weekend, but we have a staff body that feel very low and feel very battered and very bruised. Yeah. And my final question is, there's no upward you've asked in terms of the amount of security staff you want to hire. Are you going to go higher now in terms of security staff based on your projections thus far?
So we currently, for the committee, we currently have 535 security staff in what we call central processing, so Terminal 1 and Terminal 2. Okay, we're going to take it from 535 to 702 members by the end of June. So that's a gap of 167. So we'll increase it to 702, and then we will try and go again to 800 through the summer. So we have 104 of that gap of 167. We have 104 in training, and we have 63 who are in a pipeline. But the reality is, it's slow to get people in, and we want to get people on the flights. The reason why the staff, Deputy Smith, are feeling like that is I've had the opportunity to work in a number of different companies. I've never worked in a company where there is such pride, I think you know this as well as I do, by the frontline officers. Yeah. Right across. There is incredible pride. So that's why they feel down, and we feel that we have let them down. And we let them down this weekend with the rostering error that occurred.
Just very quickly, following on, the 248 were the numbers of security checkers that were let go under a voluntary redundancy package. Do you now accept that that was too grave of a cut?
Yes, I do.
Okay. I'll now move to Deputy Down O'Rourke. Deputy O'Rourke, 6 minutes and then an additional minute.
Thanks. Thanks. So I think that's the point. You cut too deep and you're struggling to recruit quickly enough to keep up with demand. You say that there is a resource gap. What level of search unit staff do you need, ideally, to cope with the demand that's there at the minute? What's the gap that you have? Obviously, you're aiming for 702 by the end of the month. What would be content for you at this point in time?
Deputy, we're 60 security officers behind where we need to be. Okay. And this, you run on very fine margins. Okay. And if you don't mind me challenging back, Deputy O'Rourke, hindsight,
yes.
You said we cut too deep.
I'll come back,
Nobody could have expected this rebound.
Yeah. So you're 60 short, right?
For last weekend.
For last weekend.
Yes.
And what will you be short for this weekend?
Well, actually, because of everything we've done and the challenges from the chair, we are actually going to...
So that's where I'm getting to. You don't have enough staff, suitably qualified staff, to match the demand. And that is a pressure point. And you say you're running a very finite margin of error. You said last weekend you were unable to substitute at short notice. This weekend, if the same scenario arises like last weekend and you have a little bit more of a buffer with your 10%, what happens different this weekend than happened last weekend?
Deputy, we're running on very, very fine margins. And as I'm sure, well, I know you know, right across Europe, airports are...
just a question. What happens different this weekend compared to last weekend? You said appropriate escalation in your opening statement, appropriate escalation. What does that look like? Do you have an additional reserve? Have you asked staff to do...
We will have 40 more officers this weekend. We have brought officers up from Cork, which we're very grateful for. We have a very extensive overtime package in place, Deputy O'Rourke, which is triple time. We are releasing all available security staff from other activities that they might have been doing across the airport. We will be consolidating some of our gate posts. Those are the sort of outside gate posts for where some of the cargo and other equipment comes into the airport. So we'll be doing a consolidation period to make sure that we've got 10% more, have 10% more lane processing. Obviously, we've got our task force, so we have 450 people who don't work on a frontline role, who are all doing activities. I did Monday last week, 3 a.m. I'll do I'll do Friday and Saturday as just in there helping. And those are the sorts of redundancy we're putting in.
And in terms of, so there's staff coming from Cork. What number of staff and on what sort of period? And then, if just let me finish the question. There is a suggestion that there are other personnel that you could draw on. For example, the Defence Forces, Civil Defence, is there any other pool of people that you are looking for? And I make the point in relation to Cork Airport, and I made it in relation to other airports. Obviously, there's a challenge here for suitably qualified people who have the suitable clearance and the expertise. If you're leaning on other airports, in your hour of need, that needs to be returned in the future, and I think government need to, if government have a role in relation to that, there's a national policy coming up, they need to make due note of that. So are there additional resources that could be drawn on from?
So, well, first of all, An Garda Síochána have been absolutely fantastic, and I can't speak more highly about the work that they have done. The local the local team there at Dublin Airport have been exceptional, and Drew Harris has got right behind it. So that's number one. Number two, Cork. We have somewhere between 3 and 6 officers coming up and helping us from Cork. You might think 3 is not a lot, but actually what we need is X-ray certified officers. That's our key bottleneck at the moment, and having those officers up, even though it's 3 to 6 depending on the day, makes a material difference. We've also gone out to the other airports, both regionally here in Ireland and internationally. The problem is, I put this out into the EU to try and get security officers over here. Obviously we need to recertify them, but it can be a quick recertification. All the other airports are scrambling for this. When I went out to the regional airports, they all want to help, but they've got nobody to give. Shannon has been, Mary Constantine, that many of you will know, has been absolutely terrific. Wants to help in any way. Can't free up any security officers. She needs them all. Okay. And that's the issue we've got, Deputy O'Rourke.
And what about rehiring staff that were let go before? Obviously there's an issue here in terms of Garda clearance and the hurdles there, and in terms of the training piece. It's the quickest possible way that you can provide additional resources for
So rehiring staff that left is potentially an option. We've had 5,000 applications for the jobs that we have in place at the moment. And our preference is to work with, there are people who have chosen to come into us. There were people who voluntarily left. So our preference is our current pipeline. Okay.
So and just on my last question is just to make that point in terms of the underestimation of a factor in terms of the return back. You've pointed to international indicators, and we in this committee have heard others point towards it. But isn't it the case that you have failed to read the Irish market? And isn't it the case that you have failed to read the Ryanair factor? Isn't that what's happened here? Ryanair, one of the most successful, certainly one of the most aggressive airlines on the planet, have come back stronger than anywhere else. They literally said it, Ryanair predicts rapid rebound in airline travel. The 31st of August 2021, BBC News reported that. Didn't you miss that?
Deputy O'Rourke, you'll remember it went up and down, and then we got into December. It got very concerning with Omicron. January,
Ryanair sees very strong summer if no COVID.
And I would say that the government, which has the access to some of the best research anywhere in the world, was putting down a very significant and material amount of money to incentivize airlines to fly, because there was a very real concern that they wouldn't fly. And so we had a budget that we looked at when we went into Christmas 2021, and our budget was to be at 75%. And when I talked to other CEOs, Deputy O'Rourke, across Europe, they said, that's a pretty aggressive budget you've got there for 2022.
What's Terminal 2 at, percentage-wise?
They're both knocking around 90%. And I mean, Terminal 1's at 95%, Terminal 2's at 85%. It depends on the day.
Okay.
So when I talk to all the other airports and I sit on a council with all the other airports, they were like 75%. Ooh, that's chunky. In February, as oil prices spiked, as Ukraine kicked off, as the cost of living was going through the roof, and as we were looking into the summer and we were deeply concerned, we should not have got rid of that amount of people. But if I knew now what I knew then, or if I knew then what I know now, excuse me, I'd have made a very different decision, Deputy O'Rourke.
Okay. Thanks. We'll now move to Deputy Stephen Matthews. Deputy Matthews, you have 6 minutes with an additional 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips, and your team. And it's good to hear you admit that last comment there, because I think that's where the problem lies within. Can I just ask you in particular about passengers with reduced mobility and how they're going to fit into your plan? Because I do have feedback from people that they were stopped at the weekend. And look, I know the weekend was chaotic and you didn't want that. None of your team wanted that. None of us want to see that again. We just want people to avail of a service, state service, and to do that in a comfortable and appropriate manner. But people were stopped coming up the ramp. It caused great distress having to walk and having to queue. And I know many people were affected by it. But can you just be sure that that information is very, very clear? People with reduced mobility, where are they going to be able to access? At what point will they be able to drive right up and be dropped at the door? Will they have to queue? Will they have to make extra arrangements? And just be very, very clear on that. If you're bringing in new staff, and when you bring in new staff, and I think you said the figure was 10% of staff, 10% increase in staff and 40 new security people, just be sure that they are briefed fully. It's very, very difficult when you get new staff in. When you've been staffed and been there for a long time, they know the ropes, they know what to do. New staff, they can be over-enthusiastic as well. Just, you really need to be careful on that. And can you be sure that that information goes to those passengers that have booked, those passengers that have booked for that assistance, where the meeting points would be, and that's clear, because, you know, that has to be a priority.
Should I respond to that?
Please, yes, do.
In fact, I've probably been remiss of not probably speaking a little bit too much. I'd like to share some of this with my team. And I'm going to ask Louise to talk about this. This is an area that she's been focusing on significantly, because PRM...
Mr. Dalton, if members are coming in, conscious of time, members have 6 minutes, 7 minutes in total.
Okay, we'll
so
be very brief.
I want questions to be direct, answers to be direct, so really the public get the information.
We're absolutely committed, Deputy Matthews, about providing a good journey for people with reduced mobility. It's something we were very good at before. Like many of the services, and Deputy Smith talked about the food and beverage, a lot of the services that we offer at the airport are really being challenged at the moment. But this is an area we have to really focus on, and particularly now with so many people in the terminals, it's an area where passengers are very concerned. But Louise, maybe just share it with Deputy Matthews.
No, I just agree with you completely, Deputy Matthews. I think, unfortunately, congested terminals and what's going on at the moment has a disproportionately negative impact on people with mobility challenges and neurodiversity, whatever the case may be. While we cannot do too much to reduce volumes, etc., we can focus on awareness, empathy, training and information. And I think that's where we really need to redouble our efforts with OCS, our partner, but also all of our staff on the ground, to make sure they're highly aware, they behave in a very empathetic way, and that's what we need to focus on over the next couple of weeks in particular. So that's all I really wanted to say.
And I would just reiterate, to make sure that information is just clearly available to people that don't want to arrive in another situation with a whole new arrangement set up that they haven't been used to. Can I just ask you, in terms of the numbers then entering the building and the numbers that were on site, and this backup, and if more people are having to arrive earlier and you're going to have more numbers on site for a longer period of time, are you at all times staying within building capacity requirements, fire capacity requirements, security requirements at all times, including these outer holding areas, whatever you're going to call those, temporary decanting areas, whatever they may be? You'll remain within fire and security regulations at all times on that.
So I might bring in Gary McLean, Deputy MD for Dublin, but I would say, Deputy Matthews, that the safety of our staff and of our passengers and the security is number one and paramount in everything we do, and it's the first and foremost on our board's list of anything they discuss with us, and I think it's critical. We've got a very good record there, but Gary, do you want to just update the Deputy?
Deputy Matthews, yeah, look, so, yeah, the safety of our passengers are number one priority throughout that whole journey. You know, and the reason we have had, in effect, you know, access control into the building for short periods of time over the recent weeks was, in effect, to ensure the safety of our passengers. We work very closely with Dublin Fire Brigade. In fact, they were on site this week with us to ensure that all the processes and procedures that we have in place manage the process safely and within any of the building controls that we're obviously obliged to operate within. So all of our plans, all of those holding points, and look, we do not intend to be in car park holding, but if we are, they will be done within the building controls and in a safe and effective manner. That's the whole purpose of those.
I don't doubt that passenger safety and passenger comfort is your priority. Of course, it is for every industry that provides a service. But in cases where we have this extra numbers arriving, holding for longer, and of course you manage a situation safely to the best of your ability as it happens, but this is a planned procedure now. So those numbers and those extra places, will you be staying within the building capacity requirements, security requirements and fire regulation requirements for people in the building and the curtilage of
Absolutely,
the building?
at all times. At all times.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Deputy Matthews. Now move to Deputy Cathal Crowe. Deputy Crowe, 6 minutes and then 1.
Thanks, Chairman. I just want to thank Dalton Philips and his team for coming here today. We've read your witness statement, and I think there's a very frustrating and sad irony that an entity which is all about moving people has been in a state of paralysis quite a number of times. And what's really frustrating for all of us here, I was one of the members that came, I think it was the end of March, early April, and we were given reassurances, we were given time frames, in fact, by which you would have this rectified. That hasn't come to pass, and again, just last week we were receiving reassuring emails that everything again will be fine, and that is so. There's this whole thing: fool me once, fool me twice. But the public who interface with your airport, who will travel out of there again today, and I travelled beside one of those passengers this morning on the train up to Dublin, leaving hours and hours in advance of her flight, absolutely petrified that they'll miss it. These are people going on holidays, going back to the UK for family funerals. Your public relations people have been on the airbus this week saying you'll compensate, but when they were asked about what level of compensation, it's totally vague, and I don't think anything appropriately compensates. So in a moment, I would like you to address that issue, but I just want to show, I don't know if you can see that, that's the departure gate in Shannon. They have a lovely graphic arch that says, please queue here. Only there is no queue. You can drop your bag, and 7 minutes later, you could be having a cup of coffee and waiting to board your flight. I think the solution to your problem, lies in airports like Shannon and the other state airports in Ireland. You're saying it's up to the airlines to choose, but have you, as Supreme Chief in Dublin Airport, said to them, you know what, maybe we can't get your passengers on the flight this weekend, I would advise you to try Shannon or Cork or Knock. Have you communicated that to them?
So, Deputy Crowe, two things in terms of the compensation. We want to react very quickly and speedily to any compensation that people may require. We're deeply sorry.
If you've booked a hotel in Spain, are you covering the costs of that?
We want to be very open to it, Deputy.
No, I know you want to be very open, but I want you to tell people, will you cover the costs of a hotel in Spain or wherever at the other end?
Yes, if they don't have insurance and it's our fault, absolutely. Deputy Crowe, we messed up. We do not want to be quibbling there at all.
Okay. And have you spoken to the likes of Shannon so that you can get passengers through? I think it's preferential to go down the motorway to Shannon than spend 3.5 hours. Some people even at 4 in the morning, you said, waiting outdoors.
So, Deputy Crowe, we are in constant liaison with the airlines. The airlines, as you know, choose where they want to fly based on where the passenger demand is. And clearly the flights from Cork and Shannon to various places across Europe. So we work with the airlines. They choose where they want to deploy their aircraft.
Have you suggested to them that your airport can fulfil their needs on certain days and they should try elsewhere?
We let the public down in May.
We've very little time. Have you suggested to them?
I'm just saying, Deputy Crowe, that 94% of people went through the airport in May under 45 minutes. It's not where we want to be.
Have you, come here, we're running down the clock here, have you suggested to people that your airport can't fulfil their needs and that they should reschedule their flight or move to Shannon or Cork or Knock?
So, Deputy Corry, Vincent has been working specifically on this. Let me have Vincent share with you.
In summary, Deputy Crowe, yes, we have engaged with the airlines. We've obviously run a variety of scenarios as we look forward to determine the future demand and the future capacity. And as part of that scenario planning, we have actively discussed with the airlines whether they have the capability and the desire to shift capacity to other airports should the need arise. And when I say that, they obviously have the prerogative themselves to move capacity at any point in time. And we have had open engagement with the airlines. Okay. I would say that there are a whole range of logistical challenges in relation to that, not least crew and resources on the airline side.
Sure.
But we have been open and explicit in our discussions with the airlines on that.
Can I next ask, your updated advice seems to be incongruent with what airlines are actually offering. So I think the current advice is to arrive on 2.5 hours before the flight departs, and an additional hour on top of that for bag drop. But let the likes of KLM and Air France are saying come 2 hours before the flight. So people are in a state of flux. They're looking at airline advice, they're looking at your advice. They don't know when to arrive. The other thing I'd like to know is that how chaotic do you envisage things being when the new runway opens?
So maybe I'll deal with the runway and then I'll hand to Louise and we'll talk about the passenger advice, Deputy Crow. So the new runway's been in the plans for 40 plus years, as you know. It'll be opening in in August of this year. And I think long term, it's going to be a very key and significant.
Will you be deferring that opening in light of the current chaos, or is it full steam ahead?
So, Deputy Crow, we have a plan to resource up by the end of June, which I've highlighted. It's going to be a very busy summer. Until we fully resourced up, we're asking the public to work with us. But we would expect to be, from July and August, to be in a totally different place from what happened. So you will open
the runway in August? That you will fulfil that plan?
We absolutely will. And maybe on the passenger advice, Louise, do you want to just share the details?
Yeah, Deputy Crow, you're right, because we have a complex situation in the airport in that if you have a bag to check in, not all airlines open their bag drop desks at the same time. So we have a range of 2 hours in advance to 4 hours in advance. That's even just in Terminal 1. So our advice is you arrive 2.5 hours in advance if you can. If you're checking in a bag, allow additional time, but you need to check with your airline about when their desks open. Some airlines are offering night before check-in. We are encouraging people, if they're able to do that, to avail of that. But it is a complex message. The 2.5 hours
I think that messaging is something you need to correct, because I had a family in Clare contact me this morning. They were experiencing the problem, but they were also part of the problem, because 5 of them were sitting there in suitcases waiting for that desk to open up, and that's totally incongruent with what you're saying. And very finally, there's probably time for one more question here. The 40 additional people that it's not clear from the opening statement of what you said here today. On all shifts throughout the weekend, will we see an extra 40 people there, or is that a total of 40 people dispersed intermittently through various shifts? If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's 40 incremental people that we didn't have last week, spread out over the whole weekend. In addition to those 40, we have also our existing resources are doing additional overtime and addition. So over the course of the weekend, we'll have approximately 60 kind of full-time equivalents or heads that we didn't have last weekend, and they will be directed at peak hours. So between overtime and incremental and additional heads, they're the numbers we're looking at for this weekend. Yes.
But assuming of course you're going to be compliant with working law regulations, sometimes there may only be 8 or 10 people because of breaks and because of rostering. So it isn't really, and I think it's important that's minuted here, it's not really a true gain of 40.
It's the 10%, Deputy, I think is the number we've got to focus on. We've got 10% more processing power this weekend because of how the resources, and that's how we think about it.
There's a couple of 100 politicians here, but you're only seeing 7 of us. And I think the same worry would apply in the airport context. You're telling us there's 40 extra, but that's not really going to be, there's not going to be 40 there at peak times.
It's 10% more, so we'll have over 10 lanes open in each terminal at key points, which is a 10% improvement in terms of what we had last weekend.
A 10% improvement would suggest to me that perhaps only 900 people, they might miss their flight. Is that what you're saying to us?
No, it's not. A 10% is a very significant, because actually how it works is you need to get the processing going early on, as you know from any environment.
A 10% improvement on 1,000 people losing flights.
The issue is if you don't get up and running fast in the morning, it's very hard to catch up. So this 10% is actually targeted more in the morning.
Mr. Phillips,
sorry.
how many additional lanes in T1 and T2? How many lanes were open in T1 and T2?
So we'll have 30% more lanes.
No. Give me the number. How many?
So we will have 10 versus 6.
6. So there were 6 lanes opened out of how many? 15.
So there should have been 10.
No. How many lanes are there in T1?
T1 can go to 12.
No, I'm told there's 15 lanes in T1.
There's 12 that we operate off.
How many are there? 15. It's either black.
No, because we operate off 12 to 30. We have a training lane. The point is, 12. We would like to be in all lanes.
And there 6 only operated in T2 as well.
On Sunday, the result have been 37 officers down.
No, just give us the numbers.
At a period of time, we were 6 versus
half of the lanes if you go with 12. That's going up to 10 in both T1 and T2 this coming weekend.
At peak periods, it'll be 10. It may actually go over in certain points because it really depends how we manage it. But what I would like to say, Chairman, is our ambition is to open even more lanes in time. We want to have as many lanes as we had pre-pandemic when people went through in 20 minutes.
Let members take this up.
If you're achieving a 10% improvement, you had 1,000 or so losing out on their flights last weekend. Does that mean that if we run that figure through your whole operation, that there will still be 800 or 900 people coming into the weekend hours missing flights?
Absolutely not. We had a very strong flight.
You believe no one will miss a flight this coming weekend? Is that your belief, given the plan you've put to government?
You're giving us that guarantee. Are you giving us a guarantee
I'm confident that
Mr. Phillips, are you giving us a guarantee that no one will miss a flight over the weekend?
I'm going to say again, Chairman, that if passengers will heed the 2.5 hours, I'm confident with our plans. We're in a very difficult situation. We're dealing with fine margins. We want people to safely make their flights. The experience at the moment is not what we would like it to be. We'd like it to be much better.
We'll cut to the chase here, Mr. Phillips. Are you telling people that are travelling both short haul and long haul that if they arrive 2.5 hours before, if they have baggage, an extra hour, if it's long haul, 3.5 hours, an extra hour, are you guaranteeing them that they will get their flights over the weekend?
I'm giving them a high level of confidence, Chairman, and that's
why not a guarantee?
Because, Chairman, there's a whole range of factors, and
that's your business, Mr. Phillips. That guarantee should be forthcoming. I'll go to members.
Chairman, I want to thank you, and I don't see how a 10% intervention can achieve a 100%
thanks, Deputy
improvement. Thank you.
Senator Dooley.
Thanks very much. First of all, thanks for a very open, frank statement, and fair play to you. You put your hands up. You said it was your call based on the information that was available to you a number of months ago that you let too many go based on the knowledge and what has happened since. That's fine. We can understand that. What you haven't concentrated on for me is what happened last Sunday and those 17 people that were scheduled that shouldn't have been scheduled. That's serious, like. How did that happen? So we haven't had any detail there, so can you talk to me about that?
So those 17, and Marcy may want to give some further colour. So those 17, Senator Dooley, they were in our training programme.
Oh yeah, I know, I get that. But how did they get onto the schedule? How did it make it all the way down to the front line? That's a bit like saying there were 20 people going to London, but you know what, geez, they ended up on the flight to France.
We had a manual process failure. So we had what you'd call a handoff failure. And we made a mistake. We have corrected that anomaly, but we have a training team that was working on one system.
I get all of that, but it's just the fact that
it shouldn't have happened.
Critical data like that
shouldn't have happened.
Put in, but what? Can I finish? Are there consequences for somebody? And I don't want you to come in here and name any, but there's a chain of command. Somebody just didn't rock in and move these 17 around mistakenly.
Senator Dooley, and I know Morris wants to come in, but I would say we have a very, and this is back to Deputy Smith's comments, we have a very committed workforce who are working incredible shifts.
I know many of them.
And the security leadership team, all who are doing multiple 3 a.m. shifts and then doing a day job. Nobody's trying to do anything wrong.
Do you not accept it's worrying that there aren't checks and balances? We all make mistakes.
I was very concerned.
God, I've made plenty of them. So
we were very concerned, Senator. I don't know, Morris, if you want to add anything to that.
I sincerely apologise. We made a mistake. And we hold our hands up to that.
It's not.
We did make a mistake.
If I can, because I don't want to blame anyone. It's not about mistakes. But, like, this is key process. This is key process. There should be checks and balances. It should never get to a point that you have to apologise. You know, maybe someone in the chain of command says, I messed up, but somebody else caught it. To have such a critical error that led to such consequence, financial for you, disruption for everybody else, and it's not the person that made the mistake. It's the box in which it was made. It's the chain of command. So if you can explain that a little bit better, it would be helpful. Or if not, at least come back to us on it, because that to me speaks to an overall cultural issue around the processes that you have. And I'll move then to this point. So you're now talking about, which is a good idea, the idea of cordons, and you hold people back and you stage them. That would seem to me to be a fairly obvious thing. I just don't understand why that wasn't deployed quicker. So it goes back to this process, checks, balances, all of that. I can't understand why that wasn't deployed more quickly. Like, you do risk profiling, you do risk analysis, you do risk planning. You know, there's a suspect package found, you've got to get people out. Had you thought that through? Okay, so it was that the lanes were, there was nobody to process people, but there are other things that cause chaos from time to time at an airport. And it doesn't seem to me that you had something to deploy out the drawer, that you already had everybody trained in, no different to a fire drill in this building. We know when it happens, there's people on each corridor that tell us what to do and we follow it. Wasn't there, folks?
I fully empathise with what you're saying. We've been 151 days this year. We've had 2 really difficult days when we really let customers down with real challenges. 149 days, we've done a solid job.
No, and I get that, but you see, we were in the IAA the other day. The Aviation Authority, who are responsible for the way planes fly, they can't have an off day, because if they do, 30 aircraft crash into each other. You seem to have a more lax approach, because I'm not getting the sense from you or your team that you have a response available, or that you have a drill available to you when it hits the fan, quite frankly. When the muck hits the fan, there doesn't seem to be a response that follows a rigorous routine. You know, if X happens, then you proceed through.
And I'll bring Gary in, Senator, but what I would say is in security, as you know from your discussion with the IAA, there is no margin for error. Yeah. So people who do this skilled job are certified, and we can't just, if one doesn't turn up, get somebody else.
No, and I get that.
In terms of the queue management.
And I get that, okay. But I think you're missing the point. I want to, we all know things happen, you know, but when they happen, there should be a response. And I'm not getting the sense from you that there was a plan in place to deal with it. We all get inconvenienced. I've missed flights. Yeah. I've had layovers. Yeah. I've been delayed. When I worked and lived in
Gary,
the real world, I travelled a lot.
Share with the Senator.
Yeah, Senator, look, 100% our focus is on safety. Our focus is on ensuring we have business continuity and plans for all eventualities. We do have a business continuity plan in relation to the event that happened. On the day, queues built outside the terminal, and we used that business continuity plan around controlling access into the building to ensure the safety of passengers. Queues developed an awful lot quicker than we would have anticipated, obviously as a result of the reduced processing, and the plans that would have been, which we will put in place if it happens again, required areas of the car park.
Okay, so there's some learnings.
So,
I get that.
Learning. So
we'll move on then. Thanks for that. I have a concern about the way in which the security lanes operate. We all have had experience of different airports. I think it's outdated. I think it was outdated when it was built. I don't think you have enough space up there based on what I see in other airports in terms of the way people have to snake around. The point from the back to the front is poor. For the want of a better word, your basket delivery system is like something you'd see in some kind of an antiquated airport. Like even Terminal 1 brings the basket back quicker. I see, because I go through the airport quite a bit, I just see the things that cause delays. And there's a very poor layout there by comparisons to even Terminal 1 at times. Shannon Airport has been mentioned. For sure they put in new equipment. You didn't. I think you can maybe tell us about that that allows people to leave the liquids in the bags, which get people through a lot more quickly. I'm just concerned. Anytime I go through that airport, I see a new concession shop opening in the mall. There's new construction works around it. Seems to me that you're more interested in, and this isn't meant to be overly critical, but you're more interested in the retail offering in terms of operating as a glorified department store than you are about processing passengers. I would contend the reason for that is you know that you have the airlines by the throat, because there's no effective competition. So you can ease off if you want on the passenger experience, so long as you're getting money from them in the shopping mall.
The CT scanners. Why Shannon have them and DA doesn't?
So I would just say that the airlines have the ultimate movable asset. We don't have the airlines buy anything, Senator Dooley, quite the opposite. They have all the power in the relationship at the moment because they can move their asset wherever they want.
Just finishing this. They go where critical mass of passengers are. You know that now better than I do. You know as well as I do that capital city, where the volume of passengers are, you have the airlines.
We have a very clear plan on the security.
If I can come back to your comments on the security side. I do agree with you. Our passenger experience in Terminal 1 in particular from the security area could be much better.
Terminal 2 too, by the way.
Well, I think Terminal 2 is probably better than Terminal 1, but all of our security equipment is in full compliance with the regulations. And we do take our security equipment. Sorry,
Chairman, I can't. Look, we know there. Of course, you're in.
Can I finish?
I know there's a limited amount of time.
Yeah,
okay,
and it just needs to be.
Really.
They are in compliance. I'm not questioning the compliance, but you've been through other airports as well. You go to various different shows. You go to conferences. You see what's out there.
The new equipment is coming, and there are real advances, as Shannon has done with the C3, and that's something we're very focused on. There are a number of large airports that are starting to operate it in small numbers. We see a big opportunity to do it, Senator Dooley.
Okay. Thank you.
Just add, we have invested significantly in our whole baggage system, which passengers wouldn't see, which is into depth. And that has been our priority over the last couple of years.
Thanks.
And we are now moving on to our central search.
We'll now, basically, Deputy Lowry, 6 minutes with one.
From all of the discussion and the debate that has taken place, the nub of the issue is that you don't have enough staff to cater for the number of people who are running through the airport. And the real question here is, you disemployed hundreds of experienced staff, and there's no doubt now you've conceded that you did it too quickly, you cut too deep. And what I'm interested to know is, what process did you engage in before you made that decision? It obviously started at possibly the MD looking at it. I'm sure it went through the department of your financial unit. It went through at executive level, and it went through at board level. And am I right in saying you have 4 worker directors on your board?
Right.
Yeah. I'm amazed that a plan like this, which had such implications for the airport and for the staffing of the airport, that it actually got through. And I really want to ask the question as well, was government informed of this? Like, you were, at this stage you were like any other company, as you say yourself, you were drawing down the wage subsidy, I presume, for some of your workers. So how much money did the company generate under the wage subsidy scheme? I have a business and I didn't engage in the wage subsidy scheme, but there's one thing I knew for certain, that if I didn't keep my staff during COVID, I would have no business when COVID was over. And I can't understand how all you intelligent people out there, with all the advices you had, the communications that you had with the Department of Transport. The Department of Transport is a huge unit within our public service. We have 2 ministers who have bus loads of advisors. I can't understand how nobody could pick up the implications of what you were actually doing and the decision that you made to disemploy so many people so quickly. I really find it difficult to understand how you didn't anticipate that this was going to be a problem.
Deputy Larry, and I might bring Catherine in here, there were no material analysts out there who were reporting that 2022 would be where it was going to be. There were none in Ireland, in Europe, of any credibility. S&P Fitches, ACI, IATA, none of them saw this. They all saw 2024, and we took the best advice, Deputy Larry, that we could take. The government was fueling in 90 million to try and do some incentives. We acted with the best information we had. Deputy Larry, nobody saw that. And that's why up and down this country, there are restaurants, there are hotels, there are bars that aren't open at the moment. Catherine, do you want to just give some colour?
I don't, but my point is, you mentioned earlier on that you're like any other business. You're not. You're not. And you're not like any other business. You are a strategically important part of corporate Ireland. And I can't understand is when you were losing all this money and at the same time you were drawing the wage subsidy scheme from the National Exchequer, I can't understand why somebody can go to government and say this is likely to be the result of and the implication of the decision that we're making. I cannot understand it.
I might just address those.
I feel sorry, there's a lot of you in here probably who can take some of the blame, but my God, there's a lot of people out there, including government ministers and government advisors, who should have seen this coming down the line. And can I say to you that as somebody who has some clue about a business, the cost of what you have done is going to outweigh what you think you saved, because you're now into a situation where you're paying treble time, where you're paying compensation. So the exercise that you're involved in now is hugely expensive, and nobody can put a price on the reputational damage that has happened both to your organisation and to the country in general. Pick up the New York Times last weekend and look at the international publicity that the events got. Nobody could buy that kind of bad publicity. So the point I'm making to you is this was badly thought out from the start, and I'm not so sure from everything you said today. I accept that you're totally genuine and you're saying everything in good faith, but I really don't think the answers that we've got today are going to address the problem, and we will, in my view, I wouldn't ask you for a guarantee because I think it's impossible to give a guarantee, but I think from what everything you've said, there's an inevitability about further delays at Dublin Airport.
Can I just address some of those points, because you're absolutely right. I mean, DAA is a critical piece of state infrastructure. We are a semi-state body, but we're a commercial entity. So I suppose we are required to fund ourselves from our profits, and we also fund ourselves through accessing debt in the capital markets and historically from the European Investment Bank. So we have a credit rating, and we absolutely need to protect our financial profile so that we can continue to access capital markets on a go-forward basis. So when this crisis hit, absolutely it became evident that the aviation industry was one of the most significantly impacted industries. And I suppose as the months and weeks passed, it also became clear that this crisis was going to impact us for a significant amount of time. Dalton has referenced on a number of occasions that all of the industry analysts throughout the course of the 2 years that the pandemic impacted us suggested we wouldn't be back at 35 million passengers until 2024 and 2025. And just to be clear, we would have had a payroll cost at the end of 2019 of 20 million a month with 3,000 domestic passengers to service 35 million passengers. The EWSS and TWSS supports that we got were about 4 million of that. Our staff took pay cuts, which were about another 2 to 3 million of that a month. So we were ultimately able to remediate our 20 million a month payroll cost onto about 9 million a month. And we absolutely needed to do that, or else we would have been losing €1 million a day, as has been referenced by us, for the whole 2 years. And that would have categorically damaged our financial profile for the next number of years. We were always mindful that we needed to be able to get back off the mat when COVID had stopped impacting us and be able to do our business again. So I suppose that's a little bit of context around why we felt that we needed to make that decision.
Okay, you've given me an answer. I would have thought that your reputational profile was more important than your financial profile, particularly when you could have reached out to government and sought support in view of the circumstances that you found yourself in. Could I ask one final question of you? Could you tell me what's the ratio of permanent staff to casual staff to temporary staff at the airport? We've heard a lot of discussion about the contracts, and I know people that have made an application for the jobs that are there. Now, the contracts you're saying is 20, you guarantee 20 hours, but After that, it's possibly 40 people are on standby. Now, you're obviously, when it comes to recruitment, you're kind of restricting yourself. For instance, if somebody in Tipperary applies for a job at the airport and they're given 20 hours and they're told they're on standby for the other 20 hours, so at short notice they have to get from wherever it is, the Midlands, to the airport. So I think you have to get back to the stage of the airport where you have a permanent, fully trained, qualified, professional staff that can expedite proceedings. And you have been too reliant on casual staff, and the contract that you have out at the moment leads me to believe that that's the way you're going to go forward as well with casual contracts. Could you tell me what is the ratio?
I'd like to bring Brendan in, because this is something that we're really focusing on at the moment, particularly in this labour market.
I think it's very important we get across that the last thing DAA wants to offer our colleagues are contracts that wouldn't lend themselves to people having a decent standard of living and having some certainty with regard to when they work and how they work. And I can understand how people see those type of contracts that typically sort of exist in the retail sector, but it doesn't operate like that in aviation. So the vast majority of our employees would be permanent full-time employees, and particularly in this area where people work, 75% of the people, the ASU officers, would work what I call static rosters. So there's no fluctuation in either the number of hours they work or when they work. So they have absolute certainty there. In the model that we brought in as a resulting from COVID, we have 25% of people who are on a flexible pool roster, 20 to 40 hours. They get 30 days notice of a 30 days roster, so it's 60 days before there's any change in people's roster. But I can absolutely tell you there is no intention of DAA to go down the road of bringing in sort of casual contracts for employment that wouldn't, it's not in our interest, because we won't have, retention will be an issue. We have huge issues around Garda clearance, training, so it's not in our interest at all to have turnover of employees. We want to make sure we offer a package that attracts people to work in the DAA, and I believe that we do. And I think the 4,000 applications that come in for these roles in ASU are demonstrable proof of that. So absolutely we're committed, and me as the head of ER, and I work with the heads of HR in each of the business units, look at the contracts. We engage with our trade union partners. All the contracts we have are all negotiated and agreed with all the unions that exist in DAA. But it's absolutely, and I can give this committee an assurance, not our desire to have contracts that encourage people to leave. That is not in our interest, and it's not how we want to treat our employees. Absolutely not.
Senator Jolly Buttimer. 6 minutes in Denmark.
Good Chairman, and can I welcome our representatives from the DA, and can I begin by asking Mr Phillips, would you apologise to your staff today here? I know you apologise to the travelling public. Can I ask you, just because I think it's a mistake today that you didn't bring in one of your workwear directors or one of your staff in the front line, and I might ask you at the beginning if you would apologise to your staff as well, because in fairness to them, and I know some of you in the room today were there last Sunday, you got the brunt of the abuse that was deserved of the decisions, but not of the staff at the front line.
Unreservedly, every one of our staff members who had to deal with a working environment that they never signed up for, Senator Potter.
Thank you, because it is important, and you have said
unreservedly.
Today, and in our meeting with you on the 4th of April, you did pay tribute to your staff. And I want to thank you for coming in here today, for your honesty and your candour with us today. Mr O'Hanlon, Claire Byrne Live last Monday night had a former member of staff on. Anecdotally, I speak to members of staff in DA, both in Dublin and Cork, and I think you've got wonderful staff. But I'm told, rightly or wrongly, that part of the issue is the staffing contracts. And based upon today's presentation, so for example, at 3 a.m. on a Saturday morning, what happens next weekend if a 3 a.m. shift, the same event occurs this weekend where you have 17 people or 20 people, 37 people not coming in? What happens then? How do you incentivise the 3 a.m. shift people? Is it the contracts are wrong?
No, I don't believe so. We don't have... the contracts are incorporated shift premium for the employees. If you look at, we don't have that issue at all other times of the year. accept what happened last Sunday is a combination of a number of factors which my colleagues have touched on today.
But what happens this weekend if the same thing happens in the exact same manner?
But I
don't
believe any of that relates back to the contract of employment.
You don't?
No, I don't believe that causes the issue. I mean, people have been absent, colleagues have been absent for whatever reasons. We do have a very attractive sick pay scheme, we cover people, but I don't believe the contract contributes to that.
Okay. Can I ask in the context of when does the weekend begin for this weekend? When is this whole new 4-point plan kicking in?
So, the bank holiday weekend, the 4 big days, Senator Bottomer, are really Friday, Saturday, Sunday and Monday.
Okay. Could I appeal to you, and I know you've had members of your crew, or your staff rather, on public airwaves. It is important through social media, through the national airwaves, through your media, that you communicate directly with people. Can I ask you to do that on a really regular basis, not just kind of through here, but it is important that you do communicate with people. Can I ask, just in the context of, and you use the phrase processes issue on page 3 of your presentation to us, points 33, 34, the issue for the travelling public, they have no interest in the minutiae of who can open what lane or who controls what lane. Have you empowered staff to be able to do that in this coming weekend? Where you said that they haven't been certified or that can be readily substituted by other DA staff. Is that process issue solved now?
So, maybe you want to cover the communication point first, and then I'll cover, or Morris can cover the process piece.
Thank you, Senator Bottomer. I think there's been on average over 300 articles or interviews broadcast on what happened and transpired at Dublin Airport each day since last Sunday. I can assure you that both I and my communications team have been readily available to all members of the media, those here present and those in the broadcast, print and online media at all times, and will continue to be. We will have a rigorous and robust communications plan around the 4-point plan for this bank holiday weekend, and we'll certainly be engaging with the media immediately after this afternoon session.
Thank you.
Some clarity, Senator Bottomer, on the process.
Sorry, and apologies for my lack of technical know-how, but you said in your presentation this afternoon that certain staff can't open lanes or lines and only certain staff can open lines. And points 33, 34. 34. Many of those 37 staff have particular clearances and certifications required to open and operate a lane.
Correct.
So is that process being changed that we won't have that situation?
Depends on the certification. So maybe Morris, you want to share?
Yeah. So only certified screeners can work in screening.
Right.
So what we've done for this weekend is we have more certified screeners working. So it's not so much a process issue. There was a process issue, as the Senator pointed out earlier, with respect to our planning for the weekend. So that certainly was a process issue.
Okay. Can I just conclude, Chairman, by saying 2 things, and I thank you, and I apologise if you guys another meeting. You are a strategically important state asset, facility, service. It should have been classified accordingly. I do believe, Chairman, and Mr. Phillips, to be fair, you are right. Nobody foresaw what was happening, because I have gone through the newspapers and articles. Around the world there are issues with aviation. So those who claim to have a knowledge that it wasn't going to happen, I'm sorry, they didn't. And I'd stand over that in this room today here. It is not acceptable. It is not acceptable that on a continual basis that some people have said today that they want to redeploy staff from Cork Airport to Dublin. We must not cut the capacity of Cork Airport or indeed Shannon Airport, because it is critical that the capacity of Cork under your watch, under DEA, is kept to its fullest. And I would make the point, and I'll conclude in this, Chairman, for another day, there needs to be a re-emphasis and a re-accentuation of government aviation policy, and the airlines, Dublin Airport Authority, government and the airports have a role to play, because 85% of our travelling public are coming in out of Dublin Airport, and that's far too high. And can I just conclude, Mr. Phillips, by wishing you well in your new move. I know today is a disappointing day for you, and I know that your staff here today are doing your best. But I want to thank the staff on the front line last Sunday. I had people ringing me at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I thought, Chairman, that they were actually imagining or making it up. They weren't, unfortunately. But I do hope that we will never be back to where we were today. But thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Senator Bottomer.
I'm actually on the roster myself, so just a couple of things. For the public looking in at the moment, Mr. Phillips, If they turn up Friday, Saturday, Sunday or Monday to Dublin Airport to get a flight, what will be the situation? How long will they be queuing outside T1 or T2? And then how long do you anticipate it will take for them to get through their airline? And then from the airline, they'll have to queue to get into security. And then once they pass just checking at security, then they go into the security checks itself. So how long will they be waiting?
So, Chair, our advice is, as we've discussed earlier, 2.5 hours if you don't have a bag to drop on a European short-haul flight. Allow an extra hour if you do need to check a bag in. We will do everything we can to get as many through. As I said, 95% of all people through May went in under 45 minutes. There will be periods over this weekend, Chair, where queuing could be an hour.
Are you expecting people to be queuing outside T1 and T2?
At certain peak points, there may be queuing outside. As I said this morning, we had people out for 10 minutes. Now, people were making their flights. The queue was moving well. We want to be at 20 minutes. That's our goal, and that's where we were, and that's where we'll get back to, Chair.
I've looked at the weather forecast, and tomorrow there's rain from 2 o'clock onwards. On Friday, there's rain forecast on your early morning flights between midnight and 1 p.m. The rest of the weekend at the moment seems okay. So if it's raining outside T1 and T2, what do you want to tell your passengers?
So part of the plan is to use other areas, Chair, where we can ensure that passengers are covered. We don't want anybody else.
What are the other areas?
So this is the triage point that Gary was talking about earlier, Chair, in terms of some of our atrium and car parking facilities.
If it's raining, will people be out in the rain?
Potentially, Chair.
That's straightforward. I mean, just looking at that on a human level, right?
The plan is, though, as I said, is that we want to get covered areas so that doesn't happen at all. I would ask you
to address that. Secondly, I've seen your plan, and a few quick questions. The 40 people that are extra security staff, where are they coming from? What's their makeup?
So
we have a training class coming out of training this week.
So how many of those 40 are trainees?
30.
And are there some of the 17 that couldn't come on last weekend?
Potentially.
So of those 40, you said how many are trainees?
30.
And the other 10?
We've 3 from Cork, and then we have a mixture of us consolidating our vehicle control posts. So we have control posts which are around the perimeter. So we're consolidating some of those and bringing staff in, and we're also redeploying some of our officers that are currently assisting with training, and we're redeploying those. So
my understanding, there are 14 airport police available. Are they being redeployed? Because they would have the security clearance. Are they being redeployed?
They would not have the certification required for screening. So those airport police would have been very, very heavily involved last weekend, for example, in crowd control.
Yeah.
So they have other duties across the airport.
Well, I think, with your respect, Mr. Hennessy, the word crowd control, I think, is a bit of a poor choice of words, because from what the passengers I came on to me, right, they were in T1, which is very low. They were stifling. They didn't have access to services. And I would ask on this occasion that if people are queuing, that Dublin Airport Authority would ensure that they get access to water. Free water should be handed out. Proper sanitary services, toilets, food, and those sort of things. And going back, Mr. Phillips, I want to get to a point from where someone turns up in T1 and T2. How long before they get to board their flight? I had a couple on to me on Saturday night, and they turned up on a short haul for 2.5 hours to fly to Madrid, over to their family, a 6:20 flight, a Ryanair flight. They arrived at T1 at 3:30 in the afternoon. They did not get down to the departure on gate 119 until 6:30 to see there was no one there and the plane was gone. So to say that people only missed their flights on Sunday, that's incorrect. They missed them on Saturday. So tell me the time period, Mr. Phillips, on that.
So 94% of people were under 45 minutes through May.
I want to deal with the here and now.
Sorry, I'm just trying to understand the question.
So my question is, you were down, the question is, with the 40 additional staff on average, how long would you think people will be waiting to get through from the time they turn up at the terminal to get boarding their flight?
From the time, I think they can be at peak periods, they could be up to an hour this weekend in the security line, Chair. And that is not where we want to be long term.
So that means someone who is short haul, if you're telling them to turn up 2.5 hours before, you believe you can get them through in an hour?
There will be, at peak periods, it could be an hour. It could be a little bit more. I'm very sorry for your friends who
Mr.
missed
Phillips,
that flight.
I know, like, we're in the role, we have to ask, right? It's in the media that reports that you flew to Saudi Arabia on Saturday. Is that correct? How long did you queue? And obviously, you're a business person. Like, do you think they were waiting 4 hours, right? And they still missed their flight on a human level on Saturday night to go over and meet their family. Did you fly to Saudi Arabia on Saturday night?
So I flew out on Saturday. When I landed, I was going out to the Middle East. As you know, for 40 years, DAA has been operating internationally. When I flew out, when I landed, I was clearly aware of what was going on the Sunday. So having flown through the night on Saturday night, I turned around and I came straight back on a night flight again.
And as for the ordinary person, how long did you have to queue to get your flight from Dublin Airport?
So on Saturday, the way I was travelling, actually, I travel various different ways when I'm going. Sometimes I travel through the normal process. Sometimes I go through fast track. Sometimes I go through platinum services. On Saturday, when I went through platinum services, the lines at that stage were okay in the business. I went through. How
long were you queuing?
I was there. Actually, it took me an hour to get through. But
so you're there an hour. I had this older couple there 4 hours. Is that fair, Mr. Phillips?
I'm deeply sorry for that couple. I am deeply sorry, and clearly, as we said earlier, there will be compensation.
Surely you would have known, Mr. Phillips, before you took the flight. What time was the flight to Saudi Arabia?
So I went through. I was at 4 o'clock. I had to be airside.
So the question is, surely at that point in time you knew there was chaos happening in Dublin Airport, and would you not decide at that point not to travel?
Actually, the issues weren't. The real issue we had was on Sunday, and Chair, I turned straight around and I came straight back. I never even got to my destination, and I did two night flights.
I'm just putting in context,
and I'm deeply sorry.
Putting it in context, right? The next thing I want to ask is, you've given us a schedule on the plan, and I see Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, first wave, second wave, third wave, fourth wave for each day. I see departing PAX 15, 12, 11, 8. Is that 15 in total between T1 and T2? What's the breakdown between, we'll say, in those peak periods? Is it half and half?
It's about 60-40.
So how many typically would be in T1? So take the first wave on the first day. We should have got a breakdown T1 and T2. The 15, how many of those are T1 and how many are T2?
9,000 would be roughly T1, balance T2.
9 and 4.
Yeah.
And if you take the first wave on Friday, there's 16.
It would be quite similar. About 9,000 would be the first. 8 to 9,000 would be the first wave. I think on.
And then 9 and 7.
In the morning, it's just over 10.
And then on the first wave on Saturday, what's the breakdown T1 and T2?
Yeah, I think on Saturday morning it could be 10 and 6.
10 and 6. And then on the first wave on Saturday, 15.
Sorry, Sunday.
Sunday,
yeah,
rather.
So it'll be 9 and 6.
And then on Monday, the first wave, 16.
It'll be 9 or 10 and 6. Sorry.
10 and 6, right. Now, looking at that there, T1, where there's serious congestion, you have 9 first wave Friday, 9 the first wave Friday, 10 the first wave on Saturday, 9 on Sunday, and 10 on Monday. Is that sufficient? And like I'm hearing that if you have 12 lanes open, you're probably looking at an hour of a wait. So the question is, and I'm asking that you had 6 open in each terminal at peak periods. In over the weekend, so you're going
6 to 7.
6 to 7. You're only going up from 6 to 7 to 9 in T1 and you're actually dropping the
9 was 9,000 passengers, not lanes.
So how many lanes? I want to know the lanes.
So on Sunday morning, for example, we take Sunday morning.
Yeah.
We would estimate that we would require 11 lanes in Terminal 1.
And how many in Terminal 2?
Roughly the same in Terminal 2 at the peak.
But it's coming, the figure you're giving the first wave is 15. I'm being shown. So what that's the the information I want you're not giving me, which is if I go down through the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, I just want the first waves. Give me the break between the number of lanes opened, lanes open in T1 and T2 for the first wave for the 4 days.
It is dynamic, but we'll give you an approximation.
No, give me a rough approximation.
A rough, yeah. Go on.
Okay, so Thursday morning, first wave. We will have 12 lanes open in first wave in Terminal 2.
And how many in T2?
And we'll have 11 open in T2.
Friday.
This is from 4 a.m.
Yeah, I accept that. Friday.
So Friday, we are currently planned to have 13 lanes open in T1 and 12 lanes open in T2.
Okay, Saturday?
Saturday, we are planning to have 13 lanes open in T1 and 12 lanes open in T2.
Sunday?
Sunday, we're planning to have 13 lanes open in T1 and 11 lanes open in T2.
And Monday?
Monday, we are planning to have 12 lanes open in T1 and 11 lanes open in T2.
Now that gives me more reassurance. So that means that on Thursday, 12-11, Friday, 12-12, and I presume they'll be replicated pro-rata down in the other waves.
Yes.
Okay.
And they go up and go down depending on the flows. Okay. And we have the ability Chair, to move teams.
My understanding is if there's 12 lanes, you're possibly waiting an hour. Is that reasonable?
We'd be very confident that with 12 lanes open, it'll be less than an hour. Yeah.
Okay. The next thing then I want is, would you consider from 6 a.m. in the morning putting up the number of lanes that are open in each terminal? That would give people a lot of reassurance.
Our desire, Chair, is ultimately, you were talking about how many, are there 15 lanes in T1, and we were debating whether there's 15. Our desire is to have as many open as much as the time.
It gives people a huge amount of reassurance if they know the lanes are open.
But we don't have, that's where we're building back into. That's how we used to operate, Chair.
Will you do that? Or even over the weekend? But you're giving an assurance that they're the number of lanes that will be opened.
That's to qualify, that's the peak period, and because staff got to get breaks, it moves around, Chair. And we want to get as many as we can. We wish we could open more.
The 248 of security checkers that were let go in the voluntary drive, how many of those are looking to come back? And have you discussed with the unions about bringing those back?
So we haven't approached any yet to see whether they want to come back, but Brendan, you might share your thoughts on the discussions we've had with them.
They're hugely experienced. Quickly, I'm conscious of my time.
Yeah, so we did speak to the unions yesterday, the most recent engagement with them. The feedback from the unions is not positive.
Even if they were put on a 3-month contract?
We outlined that we would be looking at a 4-month contract with a 2-month extension. But there was a very negative response to that. Now, I've put a call into one of the union officials today before I come over here just to sort of understand what might be driving it, what might be able to move that on. We have a number of engagements scheduled with the trade union around this particular population, around their pay, and whether there's anything in that engagement that might unlock or deal with any of the negative reaction.
Our focus is the training that we've got for the recruits that are coming through. We have a pipeline.
Just do a quick reconciliation. Before you let your 248 go, how many security checkers did DA have?
So we were close to about 700 in the central search area.
So when that 248...
So 900 if you take the total population.
So 900, you let go 248, and that brings you down to...
That was the 25% reduction, essentially.
That's about roughly about 750 remaining. How many do you have today?
So we're about 170 short of where we need to be.
Oh no, but I'm more interested. Do you still have those 750?
So it's slightly apples and oranges because we have 535 in our central search area.
What's the difference between the 535 and the 750?
We have 535 in central search. We have another 104 in training, and then the balance are in our vehicle control posts, our external posts.
And then the question then, how many people have you recruited to date in terms of the recruitment drive security checkers? How many to date?
To date, we've recruited about 300 in total.
Okay. How many of those are currently on the front line?
We have about 100 in training, so the balance are on the front line.
So when will and those 200 is 30 of those in the 40 that will be on duty this weekend?
They will, yes.
When will the other 100 be trained? And
over the next 2, 3, 4 weeks.
And so you'll have all of those in place by the end of June?
Correct. Well, by the end of June we will, yes.
Can I now move to the next member, Deputy Muraku?
Guramaig of Kildare. Obviously, we'd all prefer to be dealing with a different set of circumstances. Apologies if I go back over any ground that people have already gone over. I was trying to run 2 events and trying to watch this on my phone. So, look, it is what it is, right? Well, I don't think we need me to repeat absolute disaster, chaos. Nobody wants to see that. And an absolute disaster from this state's point of view, even on an international basis. Could we just very quickly go back to, let's say, the 37 people, as in the 20 who didn't show up, and then particularly how this rostering issue happened, or the lack of certification, or not knowing. And you said this is a process you've changed. This never arose before, or we never had an issue like this. Was this an aberrational amount of people that didn't show up? Or?
This was a new class of 17 trainees who, as I said earlier, a manual process where they were in the system to be rostered. In fact, they weren't certified. They weren't ready to go into...
No, and I get that. And someone believed they were going to be rostered, right? So it has never arisen before. You've caught the process. It won't happen again.
It was a manual process, right. And we've put belt and braces in to ensure that it never happens again. Because, as you said, it created huge distress for the travelling public. Right. I'm deeply sorry for that.
And very quickly, how many staff did you have on, of which, like it's 20 out of how many?
So a typical shift, like on Sunday, was about 275. Right. So when we lost the 37, we were down to about, I think it was 238.
Right. 17, for the want of a better term, being your own fault or a process mistake, and 20 not showing it. Would that be the usual case that would happen? Would you have to deal with that?
Look, it was a high level of absenteeism, but I think, as we've discussed today, our staff are under a huge amount of stress, and if people are sick, they're sick, Deputy.
No, I accept that completely. Sorry, Chair, you wanted it?
Just, we had 17 staff out sick last Sunday for their own personal reasons. So if staff, and it happens in any normal life, people will get sick. So, and do you have a contingency built into your numbers that caters for that eventuality?
We would, Deputy, or Chair, excuse me, we absolutely do. This was over and above.
No, for this coming weekend, do you have built in? So what can you cater for in terms of people going out sick over the bank holiday weekend? What numbers can you cater for?
What I've said, Deputy, or Chair, is we run on fine margins, so if we had a situation where we had 20 absent, which I hope we won't see again, it gets more complicated. Thankfully, we've got the plan in place, which is we've got more people operating, we've got a whole series of different processes. I can't give you a queue time, Chair. I cannot.
Do you have people on standby if that happens to come in and take up those positions?
So it depends. If somebody calls at 2 in the morning, no, we don't.
I'm amazed with that type of planning. Surely in the circumstances you've learned from last weekend, you would have people on standby in the event that people, for whatever reason, were unable to attend work.
When we want as many people to work this weekend, Chair, as possible to give our passengers the best possible experience. When we get back to post-June and July, you have a different level of redundancy in the system. At the moment, it's very tight, like all airports right across Europe. It's very tight. We would love to have more people in, but our staff have been huge demands from them, Chair. I think they've done an extraordinary job.
Okay.
I think we'd all accept that, and that's accepting the pressure that they're under. And look, anybody who's been through an airport in the last while can attest to that. As I say, we had a particular situation that we need to avoid, and like you're talking about this 4-point plan, and I'm going to paraphrase, but I was led to believe, and I suppose the chair was probably coming from the same place, that there is a ramp-up facility or whatever if the need be.
Oh, Deputy Merkel, we are very tight at the moment, and we will be very, and the travelling public, we are asking to bear with us. European travel, nobody expected, Deputy, I'm not sure if you heard this earlier, but we were saying that nobody expected this ramp up in travel.
We've had this conversation before about 2024, 2025, and look, we can all say whether, our anecdotal information that people said they wanted to fly the minute they could. Anyway, none of that matters.
Senator Budemer was talking about various different reports that showed where the analysts were.
Either which way, it's the old one. We are where we are. Okay. So at this point in time, you've obviously looked at Cork Airport from a point of view of resources, and I think we make it straight, human resources. Where else? See if you are completely under pressure on that stretch. Have you had a conversation with government about the possibility, and are there any suitable people within state services? I know there's much talk of the army, but I mean, I think we're at a case of whatever is necessary has to be put on the table. And just where are those conversations?
So An Garda Síochána have been exemplary and have really stepped up to the plate, and we're very grateful. Many other agencies, the IAA, have been tremendous in their support. Shannon has been very supportive. They don't have any trained, certified security officers.
So is there anybody can give you anything that you need?
In terms of security screeners?
Or anybody who can do a position that, so that's it. So there is no short-term fix.
And the whole of Europe is scrambling for these security screeners.
I accept that, and I'm also, I think a number of people have already stated some of this is we're paying for the sins of the past in relation to 1,000 people that were let go. And right, you're going to make whatever arguments you're going to make in relation to that. That is what it is at this point in time. So you have, at this plan is basically putting everybody you possibly can in play for the next period and ensuring that training is going to happen for those that need to be trained, yes?
The solution is getting new certified officers to support the team. They're coming in around 30 a week. 30 a week. It's a slow process, Stephanie.
That's it. Well, two things, I suppose. Is there any way of speeding that up? And beyond that, it was said to me, and I'm going to put it to you, that is there a difficulty in relation to some of the people that were let go before, that like the training department was impacted in relation to the throughput of people being trained? Is that correct?
Do you want to share that?
We did lose resource in the training department, but that is not a constraint presently.
At this, you've made up for that. Okay, okay. Right. Another thing that's thrown in, and again, anyone who's travelled, and this is across Europe, in fairness, if you were with Aer Lingus and you were doing a bag drop over the last while, outside of the Saturday/Sunday, you went in, you dropped your bag, and you disappeared through the security checks. But if you were travelling with Lufthansa or you're travelling with somebody else, and the difficulty is you have to basically wait 2 hours beforehand, and there's an element there. I assume that's airlines not putting sufficient staff on. I think I've been told as well that even there's an element of maybe Ryanair have failed in certain places to put enough staff on in relation to facilitating their customers through. I'm throwing these questions out. It has been put to me that this is the case, so I'm asking you.
The whole sector is struggling, and whether it's ground handlers, whether it's food and beverage.
No, I get that, but tell me this. Is it a case also that people have said we can get away with less people for the check-in, bag drop scenario, so we think we have enough there? Or is it a case that they are attempting to recruit more people at this stage?
They're all trying their best to give the best customer service in difficult circumstances. Don't know if Louise, or Gary, you wanted to add any colour to that?
Like, we deal obviously very closely with airlines and the ground handlers and all our partners across the community, and I can assure you that all of them are really strongly trying to recruit and train and okay, not certified but different training that they require, not security training but different training, and they're all going through the same process of vetting, training and getting people. But it's a difficult market, and they're all struggling, but they're trying their best to get back to where we need to get back to have Dublin Airport run like it did pre-COVID.
Okay, well look, I suppose that just is the old one. It needs to happen as soon as possible, and it's a pity it didn't happen, last week. And we have enough people in relation to being able to deliver the triaging process, because the first thing that struck anybody that watched the scenes on Sunday was, what about the guy, or the person who literally had checked in, who was carrying a bag on and was stuck outside, obviously waiting for people that wanted to swing right, and they couldn't. There was, and in fairness, that's something that should have been built in beforehand. But we definitely have these processes in play, while accepting that this could be more than absolutely perfect in the sense, depending on the weather, and this being Ireland.
Yes, Deputy. We do. We don't want it. We prefer that we didn't have it like this, but I think for the coming weeks, until we get all the resources back, it's going to be a challenge. Our desire is to make sure that people safely make their flight.
But I'm going to finish on this. At the end of the day, we can't allow for every situation, but you know what you're facing. You're fairly sure that we can deliver a situation where this won't arise again, and that there will be a significant amount of eyes on if there is a need for a ramp-up type situation.
We have a lot of confidence, Deputy. The numbers are high this weekend, and so we've put a clear plan in place to give confidence to people that they will make their flights. I don't know if you...
But we can assure you, Deputy, that should we, and we are not planning for it, and we're confident we won't be in a scenario like last Sunday, but should we result again in that scenario, we will have a better controlled triage operation outside of the building, which will allow for people to be segregated on the basis of if they need to go to check-in or if they go straight to security, if they're people of reduced mobility, and all the different types of passengers we have.
Triage only kicks in if you get to a point where you have severe waiting.
Yes, the full plan, but we have different versions of that plan, but the full triage
plan has been referred to. Triage won't apply in the normal way of people coming in, no.
No, because should we have to limit access control, it'll be for such a short period of time. It won't impact people from a point of view where they're going within the building.
Mr. Phillips, you made reference. At this stage, have you have a very, very stretched workforce, very tired, working huge long hours. At this moment in time, have you reached a point where the 40 staff you have in place is what's there? You've gone to the well. Is that a fair point, Mr. Phillips?
They give you everything they can.
So the question I'm asking is, and then on standby, and it's come up in the public, the argument as to whether you should be going to government asking for the army to be on standby, in small numbers, maybe 40 or 50 of the army to be on standby to pick up on the security duties if necessary. How do you respond to that particular argument on the basis that you do not have that level of reserves in terms of backup from the workforce at this moment in time?
So the deployment of state services is absolutely outside of our remit.
But obviously, and if it arises,
if you need
have to come from a request from the DEA.
Yeah.
So the question is, are you at that point? What's your view on that particular case that's been put out there? It's a request of DEA. You're in the airport. You're the professionals. You're the people that are given the remit to run the airport. So how do you deal with that?
And Chair, if I could come in, because here I thought that you said that there was state services weren't able to provide you with what you needed, therefore it wasn't a question. But it sounds there like
I mean, on Garda Síochána, they are on our premises. We work very closely with them. The Army, remember, the Army would not be certified to run screening.
No, I didn't say that, but there's a lot of, my understanding is about 7 people on each lane. 2 people will say meeting people initially, 1 person on the screen, 2 people in terms of security, and then there's 2 other people inside. There are activities
but
they
would
could
have
do.
to. Sorry, all those activities, apart from what we call divestiture, Chair, which is when people ask you to take your jacket off, liquids, gels, laptops, etc. That is you have to be Garda cleared to be airside, but you don't have to be certified. All the other roles, you have to be certified by the IA.
My understanding is, so the Army could take up some of the roles. So the question is, can you address that point that's been put out there?
Can I respond? Sure. The Army are not aviation security cleared, so they cannot work in an airside environment. Were they aviation security cleared, the only role they could potentially do would be divestment, but that is not our constraint. People like ourselves can do divestment, and we have been doing that. It's where we assist passengers to put their bags on the trays, take their jackets off.
And the Army not do that?
Liquids and gels.
The Army not do that?
They're not aviation security cleared.
You're saying to me the talks about the Army being assisting in terms of that's spurious. It can't happen.
They could assist potentially in other roles, but not in aviation security.
Could that be fast-tracked? And I did ask earlier about, was there any means by which we could speed up the whole training process?
The Garda vetting process, back to Dalton's points earlier, on Garda Síochána have done phenomenal work, and they have speeded up the Garda vetting process as much as possible. There are a huge number of resources in that system already. DAA staff, the partners, the airlines. So they're fully tasked.
Can I move now to Senator Lynn Boylan? Senator Boylan, 6 minutes and then 1 to add on.
Great, thank you, Chair, and thanks to the guests. I just wanted to go back on the issue, I think, that Mr. Phillips was saying about using the Platinum service. My understanding is that the fast track lane is closed at the moment. Is that right? That all the lanes are just operating as normal security?
No, Senator Boylan, the fast track is open in T1 and T2.
Okay. And then see the Platinum service, this service which offers for VIP guests and allows a private check-in, security, etc. And you're familiar with it because you said you used it last Saturday, Mr. Phillips. I'm just wondering, did you pay for the use of Platinum services, or did that come out of DAA expenses?
No, it's a charge made to my cost centre. I don't personally pay for it, but it's a charge that's made into my travel budget. And as I was saying, I would travel many different ways. I think it's important to be in all parts of the business, be it going through the fast track product, being the normal security product, going through the Platinum service product, and it's an opportunity to see staff, talk to staff. Actually, it's our best performing business over the pandemic period, as people were concerned during the pandemic. They've done a terrific job, and we're very proud of the work they do.
Yeah, when you say people were very concerned about travelling during COVID, I mean, clearly the people who are using Platinum service are not just people who are concerned about travelling during COVID, they're people who have deep pockets, because access to the Platinum service starts at €295. And then you have the additional extras like chauffeur services. I mean, so when you used the Platinum services there last Saturday, did you avail of the chauffeur element of it as well?
This is a product where you are taken to the aircraft by a different vehicle. It's a very popular product, and certainly as a CEO, I think it's important to see all our different products, and I don't use it very much, to be quite honest. I happened to use it on Saturday because I wanted...
Was that, Mr. Phillips, because the delays in the airport? So you availed of
Senator Boylan,
a very high-end system because there were delays already on Saturday when you were travelling to the airport.
Senator Boylan, I did a 3 a.m. shift starting on on Monday last week. I worked the full week. I worked Saturday. I went straight to the Middle East. As soon as I heard that there was an issue, I came straight back. So I certainly, I wouldn't, if there had been an issue, I wouldn't have gone on the flight, because the whole point was I went and came all the way back. I'd have saved myself the company cost of travelling to the Middle East. And I certainly, had I known Sunday was going to be what it was, I certainly wouldn't have travelled on Saturday.
No, and I get that, and I don't doubt that you work very, very hard. You're very well paid, but I don't doubt that you work very, very hard for that money, as do a lot of the people who are working in the airport, who are on a lot less money. I suppose the question I'm asking is, you say you like to use the different security lane, so you like to use the fast track, you like to use the regular lane, you like to use platinum, so you get a feel for what the experience is of people who are coming through the airport. But did you choose to use the platinum services on Saturday because you already knew that there were starting to become significant delays through the airport, and it meant that you didn't have to queue, so that you were able to bypass the queue by going through platinum services?
No, categorically not. I travel a lot, and actually, I normally would travel either through Central Search or through Fast Track. I would, move between the two. It's an opportunity to meet different officers, and I would very much welcome. If you spoke to any of the officers, you'd know that I think they, there's always a bit of banter when different people are travelling through that they know. So absolutely not. And I certainly wouldn't have gone to the Middle East if I'd known that this was happening, and that's why I turned immediately around and came back.
Okay, and see on the platinum service, you said that that's one of your best performing services that is being offered, and I think the fast track is also quite a popular service. I mean, how much do we take in, and does the DAA take in from fast track sales annually, and how much from the platinum services?
So we don't break that down, and we keep that commercially sensitive for obvious reasons. Not that it's that I don't want to share it with you, Senator Boylan, but I know that many of the competitor airports around Europe that we compete with would like to know that. But it's a very successful product. I mean, Fast Track successful, Platinum's successful, wins many awards right across Europe for the product that they serve, and actually. The €295 compared to that product elsewhere in Europe, they offer incredible value compared to a Heathrow or a Brussels type product, and they do a brilliant job.
So I suppose is it fair to say, though, that if it is a good performing product, that it's in the interest of the Dublin Airport Authority then to not have our queues moving super efficient. So I know that I think there was a member of the committee was holding up a picture earlier around the no queues in Shannon. But is it not then in the interest of Dublin Airport Authority to have their queues, to have some delays at queues, so that you have this product to sell for those who can afford to bypass the ordinary person queue and pay their way to a faster service?
No, absolutely not. We compete against all the other European airports, Senator Boylan, and our goal is to get people through as fast as possible. Get them into the departure lounge, get them comfortable. It's very standard across all major airports to have a fast-track product. The airlines, in many cases, will demand that you have that. So if you're competing for Qatar Airways to come or an Emirates Airlines to come into Dublin Airport, one of their prerequisites will be that you have to have a fast-track product. Aer Lingus are very proud of their fast-track product. So that is absolutely not the case at all. Okay, I don't know, Vincent, so if you wanted to share anything there.
I have just one other question, if I have time, Chair, just on the baggage, but just again confirming, so the cost of you travelling through Platinum comes out of your pay package with DAA, is that correct then?
No, sorry, to be clear, there is no such thing as a free travel pass through Platinum. So when I did it in that example, Platinum services will debit my cost centre €295, because this isn't a product that we use willy-nilly, or there's no gratuities here. But I think it's important that as a CEO you experience all types of service through the airport, and certainly I would not have gone to the Middle East if I'd known that Sunday was going to happen.
So your cost centre is your expenses?
Yeah, it's an expense that I have to submit, and obviously the board, it gets submitted like any other expense.
Okay, and so just then the final question I have is just around baggage. So we've heard a lot about, I think, over 1,000 people missing their flights over the weekend. Is there figures for delays in baggage? So, how many bags didn't make it onto planes, or went to the wrong place, or ended up staying into the airport? Have we any updated figures on those?
Sorry, I guess the baggage is obviously we facilitate the access of the baggage from the check-in area through to the ground handlers and airlines in the baggage hall. The actual stats around whether bags make flights or not are held by the airlines. We don't measure, or we don't have that information as an airport. We work with our partners to ensure that the systems work to get the bags to where they need to get them, to bring them to the aircraft, but we have no way of tracking beyond that as to whether the baggage get on aircraft.
Were you happy with what you saw at the weekend in terms of the baggage handling?
I think all across the industry at the moment, baggage is a challenge. You'll have seen that in a lot of media reports. It's not Dublin Airport specific. It's part of the wider challenge across the industry we're talking about here today. But you will see that. You will see baggage being repatriated in airports all across Europe at the moment. The challenge may have arisen in any airport, and it could be being repatriated through Dublin. So it's not always a case that so it's very hard to pinpoint if that was a Dublin Airport specific problem or not.
Yeah, but I mean, was it a problem at the weekend? Was there an issue with bags backing up on baggage belts and basically staff being overwhelmed by the amount of baggage that was coming through and making sure that it got to the plane that it needed to get to?
Look, as we said earlier on, I think all parts of the industry and all parts of the community at Dublin Airport are really struggling with regard to resources. So I think the service levels that would normally have been provided pre-COVID are all a little bit diminished, and that would include, I suppose, the amount of staffing working in the baggage operation. But we don't have those figures. There's ground handlers and airlines that are doing those activities.
And will you be asking for those figures so that we can get a full picture of just how bad what happened at the weekend was?
Look, we work with them, as I said earlier on, day in, day out. They're very, very active in the recruitment market as well at the moment, trying to get staffing levels back to the levels they're at to try and ensure these problems don't persist. We work closely with them to ensure it's as smooth as it possibly can be, like all parts of the operation, day in, day out.
Okay, thanks. We'll now move to Senator Jerry Harkins. Senator Harkins, 6 minutes and then 1.
Okay, thank you, Eoghan, and thank you all very much. Look, I'm conscious that a lot of the ground that I might have wanted to cover has already been covered. But I do think, as one of the few Dublin-based members of this committee who are actually here, like Dublin Airport is not just an asset for Dublin, it's an asset for the whole country. 87%, I think, is the figure of the national aviation traffic that goes through Dublin. And when something goes wrong there, it reflects badly on yourselves, on Dublin, on Ireland, and ultimately, we become a bit of a laughingstock. And that's the last thing I know you want to happen, and it's the last thing that we want to happen, because you are a state-owned, 100% state-owned company, and you are giving people who say the state can't run things ammunition when I don't want that ammunition to exist. So, suffice to say that it's clearly, you've admitted it, it's not satisfactory in any way. People presumably missed not just holidays, but possibly missed weddings, possibly missed funerals. It's just not acceptable that people are missing flights. I suppose I have a few small questions in terms of things, not just about the delays, but also about the general passenger experience through Dublin Airport at the moment. But there are a few things, it was 248 were let go in total, was that right? 248 of the original staffing numbers. The original staff complement 248 was what was let go.
Actually, the higher now, the total number was much higher than that. We're talking about in security.
Yeah, in security. Yeah,
it was approximately that number. Yeah.
And what would have been the cost to DAA of that, or would the state and DAA have kind of shared that cost, or how?
No, we took the full cost of that.
And how much would that have been?
The full cost of our overall voluntary severance programme was 100 million.
Oh, so 100 million.
Mm-hmm. But that was for about 800 staff who left the close to just under 800.
Okay, so if 250, a little bit over a quarter of that 100 million would have been security staff, so 25 million-ish?
it's hard to be that exact about it. The amount, depends on.
I'm just trying to do the maths of 25 million on 250 people. Seems like quite a big lump sum per person. What was the amount per person?
It would be hard. I can't remember, to be honest, specifically for security, but happy to come back to the committee on some more specifics.
Yeah,
on
it
that.
just seems to be a very large amount. And have you the ability in law or otherwise to bring any of those people back? And have you asked any of them back?
So we've been, Senator Eoghan, on a very clear plan to recruit people. We've had over 4,000 people who've been looking to work for us, and that's been our plan. Our plan hasn't been to go after people who took a voluntary severance and left the company. Our plan is to get people who want to come back.
Are they in any way precluded from coming back?
There are a number of tax issues around bringing people back.
Really. That's what I'm asking.
And that's not our focus at the moment. Our focus is on the people who want to come, who want to join the company, not the people who've left.
Now, to be fair, I think it would be...
They would still need to be certified.
I accept that, but I presume that people who have done the job before maybe took the package because it might have been too good to turn down. It might have been the fact that they didn't see the bounce back coming. Maybe some of them were just burnt out of that particular kind of lifestyle, and it's not for everybody to be doing 3 o'clock in the morning shifts and 11 o'clock at night shifts and so on. But you're saying that either there are issues or there can be issues. There are issues.
It hasn't been our focus, Senator.
But I mean, if some of those people wanted to come back, could they come back? Can they reapply? Or are they precluded from doing that?
We, at the moment, we would want to work through this and work through with our union partners as well about people who had gone. I mean, we couldn't bring them back on any permanent basis. They could only come back on a temporary basis because of the nature of the scheme.
That's the point that you're finally kind of acknowledging. And I've no problem.
Oh, no, sorry, I wasn't trying to...
Yeah, I'm just... Yeah. Because, if any business, people who've done the job before are better skilled than people starting from scratch, by and large, unless they've been managed out for a different reason. A lot of these people, the work wasn't there. You wanted to be rid of them off the payroll. You wanted to reduce your cost base, which is totally logical and understandable at the time of the downturn and so on. But that's it. Basically, they can't really come back. They're precluded from coming back.
Technically speaking, from a revenue perspective.
That's the point I'm really asking. Now, you've hired, is it 300?
Mm-hmm.
So you're now back to a complement higher than what you lost. You lost 248, you have more than 300 back.
No, we had also people who actually
didn't avail of the retirement scheme or the voluntary scheme, but also left. And how many are they?
There was in excess of 60 people that would have left either through just decided to leave the business of their own accord.
So the top figure was what? Nearly 1,000? 900?
Sorry, on the overall voluntary severance?
No, in terms of security generally, there was the maximum number in security ever was how many?
In 2019, before COVID hit.
Was how many? 900-ish?
Yeah, probably 900, yeah.
You lost 248 to the retirement scheme or the early severance package or whatever you want to call it. You lost another 60 who just walked for other reasons. Mm-hmm. So you're down about 300. You've recruited about 300. So you're back to more or less full strength based on where you had been pre-COVID. Is that correct?
Well, of the 300 that we've recruited, we still have over 100 of those in training. So they're not available.
Okay, so they're not available. They're not available
Correct.
yet. Okay.
Correct.
So and when they become available, you'll be back to full strength.
We're getting close to it. Certainly by June we will be close to full strength.
This is June, as in today is the 1st of June?
By the end of June.
Okay.
But now we are actually going to recruit more people just to give us some more headroom through the summer.
And in terms of COVID at this stage, how much? I mean, I know 2 or 3 people who've got COVID in the last 2 weeks. How much is COVID affecting your staffing levels at this point?
It is still having an impact. There's no doubt about that. It had a very significant impact in January and February. But it is still having an impact on our business.
And in terms of the 37 who were missing at the weekend, 17 of them, that was some kind of a glitch that you thought they were recognised, but they're certified, but they weren't. Mm-hmm. The other 20, what was the story with those?
They were absent for a variety of reasons.
They don't. I mean, it's not just a case that they didn't appear in the morning. Do they ring up in advance and say, "I won't make it today," or "I won't be in," or you're looking for them and you realise they're not here?
It's a combination, Senator. Some people are, wake up and they suddenly found that they've got an infection or something, they don't want to come to work for very clear reasons.
But they let you know.
They would, yeah. Well, in the end, we knew about the 20, but they were not in our. We weren't expecting.
I know you knew all of a sudden they're not here, and they probably rang you maybe an hour before their shift or 2 hours before their shift. Have you got an on-call facility? I mean, I worked in security when I was in university, and I'd get phone calls at 9:30 in the morning. When can you start? An hour and a half ago, and if you could, you'd turn up and you'd do. Now, I wasn't trying to load aircraft, but there was a backup of people who were ringable, who were contactable long before SMS messages and long before phone calls.
As
emails.
When we know somebody is sick in advance, we will try and call other people. The reality is, though, that people are stretched at the moment. We had a discussion with the chair earlier about having people on call. We would love to get back to the resilience where we had people on call. At the moment, we need everybody we can in.
Okay,
and
so
we're
when they're not
fine margins.
when they're not working during downtime, and you just don't have the numbers sufficient to have an on-call panel at all.
Regrettably, at the moment.
Okay, I'm conscious of time, Cathaoirleach, and maybe just with your indulgence.
Phillips, that's worrying.
It is very worrying. I mean, that's my point. Is that there's no.
That's our ambition.
If we had another outbreak of COVID, or if something else went wrong, or if some other things happened, I'm very concerned about the fact that last weekend it was nice and dry, but that if it wasn't, and I know other members have referred to this, that lots of people could have got very wet, and particularly people with young children, older people with disabilities, and so on. You mentioned to us on our trip, and we appreciated the trip, and I remember journalists coming to me after and saying, look, the test will be Easter. And you passed that test, I think, quite well. But you referenced us at the time, and you didn't want to overly advertise the fact, but you would be I think you used the phrase, combing the queues, to try and comb out people who were further down the queue than they should have been, and their flight was whatever. Did that combing concept ever take off, or did it just fail at the weekend because you just didn't have the manpower to do it?
So, Senator, we've had through the month of May, 94% of all people got through security.
I did read your opening statement, and I appreciate all that. I'm just wondering, this combing concept that you were talking about, has that taken off?
So combing is a difficult concept. Maybe Gary will talk about it a little bit more. But we have to be careful to passengers who have arrived on time.
I appreciate that.
And then somebody who hasn't arrived on time.
That's the last point.
Okay.
No, I do appreciate that, and that's why I didn't want to overly emphasize. It is very sensitive, but and again, I think your triage concept of if you arrive 6 hours in advance, that you're not allowed into the queue ahead of the people, because the most frustrating thing in the world is if the 50 people in front of me have a flight an hour after me and I can't get there because they're all blocking my way. And that's where I'm talking about the combing of the queue thing. But you're saying that this triage thing, when will this actually start?
Gary, do you want to?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier on, this is a contingency we have. We're confident that this weekend we won't need to go into a full triage, as has been referred to. But that will ensure, if there was bad weather in your example there, that people would not be standing out in the rain for significant periods of time. We would use the car parks to do that. So we have it available to turn on. Should we need to turn it on this weekend, we may trial it at some point. But as a general rule, we're not planning.
And final point, just the passenger numbers departing on the Sunday, which was the problem day. What was the actual number of departing passengers that Sunday?
Roughly 50,000.
50,000. And what's the maximum anticipated from the airlines? Have all told you, if every airline took off with full planes, what's the maximum number will ever go to Dublin Airport this summer? I mean, you know how many aircraft are going to be departing. Yeah. You know the capacity of each aircraft. If they were all 100% full.
The busiest day would be about 59,000.
So we're about 9,000 short of that last weekend. So you have to build up